The morning mist clung to the cobblestones of Covent Garden Market like a veil of whispered accusations. Miss Clara Whitmore, once a name spoken with gentle admiration in London's drawing rooms, now moved through the crowd like a ghost, her blue-grey eyes fixed downward, her slender fingers clutching the worn reticule that had replaced the beaded purses of her former life. The winter had been cruel, but society's judgment proved far crueler. "I believe that is she," came a cutting whisper from behind a fruit seller's cart. The Whitmore girl, the one who was to marry Baron Ashcombe before he discovered her situation. Clara's cheeks flushed, but her posture remained unwavering. 6 months had taught her that dignity must be preserved, even when honor was shattered. She selected a modest bunch of violets, her only indulgence since the scandal had rendered her nearly destitute. "2 pence for the young lady," said the flower seller, her weathered face softening. "They'll brighten your parlour, they will." "You are most kind, Mrs. Finch," Clara replied, her voice carrying the quiet dignity that no amount of disgrace had managed to diminish. As she turned to leave, a carriage halted at the edge of the square, black lacquer gleaming, the horse's flanks steaming in the morning chill. The crowd parted, not with the usual mild curiosity, but with reverence that bordered on fear. Clara glanced up, and in that moment, a tall figure descended, a man whose bearing announced his consequence before his title ever could. "The Duke of Ravenshire," someone murmured. "What business could His Grace have in Covent Garden at this hour?" Duke Adrian Harrow moved with the confident authority of a man accustomed to command. His silver-grey eyes surveyed the market with detached interest until they fell upon Clara, and there they lingered, as if recognizing something long sought. She felt his gaze like a physical touch and turned away, painfully aware of her faded pelisse and the modest violets that marked her reduced circumstances. "Miss Whitmore," came a firm voice beside her, and Clara nearly dropped her flowers. The Duke of Ravenshire stood before her, removing his hat with an elegant gesture that silenced the entire market. "I believe you dropped this?" In his gloved hand lay a small silver locket, one she had never seen before. "Your Grace, I fear you are mistaken," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "That trinket does not belong to me." The Duke's expression remained impassive, but his eyes held a warmth at odds with his reputation for cold judgment. "I assure you, Miss Whitmore, it is yours. It bears the crest of truth, which I believe is your most constant companion." The market had grown silent. Every eye watched this inexplicable exchange between London's most powerful duke and the woman whose name had become synonymous with disgrace. "I cannot accept what is not mine," Clara insisted, though her voice trembled slightly, particularly when the gift would surely lead to further misconceptions. "Then perhaps," replied the Duke, replacing his hat with deliberate slowness, "I might escort you home and explain my certainty regarding its provenance, unless you fear that my company would tarnish your reputation further." A small, defiant smile touched Clara's lips. "I believe, Your Grace, that my reputation has reached its nadir. Your company could scarcely drive it lower." A murmur rippled through the onlookers. The Duke of Ravenshire, known for his impeccable propriety and unyielding standards, offered his arm to Clara Whitmore with a courtliness that seemed to challenge the very society he represented. "Mrs. Hertford," he addressed his housekeeper later that morning, "prepare the blue drawing-room. We shall have a visitor at noon." The austere woman paused in the doorway. "Forgive me, Your Grace, but is it wise to receive that particular lady? The Countess Verena has spread such vicious rumors that even Lady Mildred has begun to—" "I did not ask for your counsel on this matter," the Duke interrupted, his tone level, but allowing no further discussion. "Only your discretion." When Clara arrived, the snow had begun to fall, adding another layer of white to a city already entombed in winter's embrace. She had changed into her one remaining presentable gown, pale blue muslin that had seen better days, but still spoke of careful maintenance. "Miss Whitmore," the Duke greeted her, standing as she entered. No footman announced her. This meeting existed outside the formal rituals of society. "Thank you for honoring me with your presence." Clara removed her gloves with practiced grace, the gesture revealing slender wrists marked by subtle tension. "I confess, Your Grace, that curiosity overcame caution. Few men of your standing would risk association with one such as myself. Perhaps that speaks more to the bankruptcy of their character than to any failing of yours." The Duke gestured to a chair near the fire. "Please sit. London's chill seems particularly vindictive this season." As they settled into conversation, Clara found herself struck by the Duke's unexpected warmth. This was not the cold aristocrat of legend, but a man of measured words and thoughtful pauses. He spoke of his estate in Northumberland, of books they had both read, of music, all without once alluding to the scandal that had become her identity. "Your Grace," she finally ventured, setting down her teacup, "while I appreciate this unexpected kindness, I must ask its purpose. Men of your standing do not befriend women of my situation without reason." The Duke's expression grew serious. "Miss Whitmore, I believe you were betrayed by Baron Ashcombe for reasons beyond the rumors that circulate. The man broke his promise to you not because of any impropriety on your part, but because of an opportunity that presented itself in the form of Countess Verina's considerable fortune." Clara's face paled. "How could you possibly know this?" "Because," said the Duke, rising to retrieve a small leather folio from his desk, "I have been investigating the Baron's sudden financial recovery. A man does not satisfy creditors overnight without some form of extraordinary intervention." As he spoke, the clock struck 1, and in that moment, a footman appeared at the door, his expression grave. "Your Grace, forgive the interruption. Lady Mildred Greaves requests an immediate audience on a matter she claims cannot wait." The Duke's eyes met Clara's, and in that shared glance passed an understanding. Whatever revelation lay in the leather folio would now be witnessed by one of London's most notorious gossips. "Show her in," said the Duke, offering Clara a look of reassurance. "Perhaps it is time that certain truths found their way into society's conversation." As the drawing-room door opened to admit Lady Mildred, Clara felt the first stirring of something she had thought forever lost: hope, fragile as the snowflakes now accumulating on the windowsill, but present nonetheless. The truth, it seemed, had found its champion in the most unexpected of allies. Lady Mildred Greaves entered the blue drawing-room with the determined flourish of one accustomed to making an entrance. Her lavender gown rustled importantly as she crossed the threshold, but the practiced smile froze upon her lips at the sight of Clara Whitmore, seated by the Duke's fire. "Your Grace," she managed, her voice pitched higher than intended, "I had no notion you were otherwise engaged." The Duke of Ravenshire did not rise, a subtle breach of etiquette that did not escape Lady Mildred's notice. "Miss Whitmore and I are discussing matters of some consequence. What urgent business brings you to my door unannounced, Lady Mildred?" Clara began to gather her gloves, a habitual retreat in the face of society's judgment. "Perhaps I should withdraw." "You will remain seated, Miss Whitmore," the Duke commanded, though his tone held no harshness. "Lady Mildred's concerns can surely be aired in your presence, as they likely involve you directly." A flush crept up Lady Mildred's neck. That is to say, I merely thought to warn your Grace about certain associations that might prove detrimental to your standing." "How extraordinarily thoughtful," the Duke replied, gesturing to a chair positioned deliberately farther from the fire than Clara's. "Please, enlighten us both." Lady Mildred seated herself with visible discomfort. Her eyes darted between the Duke's impassive countenance and Clara's composed profile. "It is simply that the Countess Verina has begun circulating certain letters, purportedly written by Miss Whitmore to the Baron, which suggest improprieties that would explain his hasty withdrawal from their engagement." Clara's hands trembled slightly, but her voice remained steady. "Letters I never wrote, containing sentiments I never expressed, to a man whose true nature was revealed only after he had secured a more advantageous match." "Precisely so," the Duke interjected, opening the leather folio he had been about to share before Lady Mildred's arrival. "Which is why I have taken the liberty of comparing the handwriting in these alleged letters to Miss Whitmore's actual correspondence. Would you care to examine the evidence, Lady Mildred?" He extended several sheets of paper, one bearing Clara's neat, measured script, the other a clever but ultimately imperfect imitation. Lady Mildred's eyes widened as she examined them. "Furthermore," continued the Duke, "I have obtained statements from the Baron's former valet regarding certain late-night meetings between his master and the Countess, meetings that predated the dissolution of his engagement to Miss Whitmore by several months." Lady Mildred's expression transformed from embarrassment to calculation. "Your Grace, if what you suggest is true, then a most grievous injustice has been perpetrated against Miss Whitmore. But why would the Countess engage in such elaborate deception? Perhaps because she recognized in Miss Whitmore qualities she herself lacks: genuine grace, integrity, and the capacity to inspire true devotion rather than mere advantageous alliance." The Duke's gaze rested on Clara with an intensity that caused her to look away, qualities that have not diminished, despite 6 months of undeserved disgrace. Clara found her voice at last. "Your Grace is too kind, but kindness cannot restore what has been taken. My reputation may yet be salvaged," the Duke interrupted, if the truth is presented with sufficient authority and in the proper setting. Lady Mildred leaned forward, her curiosity now fully engaged. The Winter Assembly at Northbrook House next week. Everyone of consequence will attend. If your Grace were to publicly acknowledge Miss Whitmore there— My thoughts precisely, said the Duke with a slight smile, though I had envisioned something more definitive than mere acknowledgement. Clara rose abruptly. I cannot permit you to sacrifice your own standing in some misguided attempt to rehabilitate mine. The Ton will never accept. The Ton, the Duke stated firmly, will accept what I deem acceptable. I did not attain my position by bowing to society's arbitrary judgments. A strange stillness descended upon the room. Through the tall windows, London lay transformed beneath freshly fallen snow, a blank canvas awaiting new impressions. Sir Rowan Linton, the Duke's closest confidant, chose this moment to enter, carrying a small wooden box. The items you requested, Your Grace, he announced, nodding respectfully to the ladies. A former cavalry officer with intelligent green eyes and an air of absolute loyalty, Sir Rowan had been instrumental in gathering evidence regarding the Baron's duplicity. Excellent timing, Linton, the Duke remarked. Lady Mildred was just considering how she might assist in correcting a grave injustice. Lady Mildred's expression betrayed her internal calculation. To align with the Duke of Ravenshire in this matter could mean social elevation. To oppose him would be foolish. I have always valued truth above idle gossip, Your Grace. If Miss Whitmore has been wronged, then as a woman of principle, I cannot stand idle. How gratifying to discover your previously unarticulated principles, the Duke replied dryly. Miss Whitmore will require suitable attire for the Winter Assembly. I trust your discernment in such matters exceeds your judgment of character. Clara attempted to protest once more. Your Grace, I cannot accept such charity. It is not charity, Miss Whitmore, but restitution, the Duke interrupted. For too long I remained silent while watching a good woman's name be dragged through mud. That ends today. Sir Rowan opened the wooden box, revealing an elegant silver signet ring bearing the Ravenshire crest. The jeweller completed the engraving as requested, Your Grace. The Duke took the ring, studying it momentarily before addressing Clara directly. Miss Whitmore, I have a proposition that may shock you, but I ask that you consider it with an open mind. Adrian, Sir Rowan cautioned, using the Duke's given name with the familiarity of long friendship. Perhaps this discussion might better proceed without an audience. Lady Mildred rose indignantly. If I am to assist in Miss Whitmore's social rehabilitation, surely I should be privy to— You misunderstand your role, Lady Mildred, the Duke stated. You are not to assist in Miss Whitmore's rehabilitation. You are merely to cease contributing to her defamation. A subtle but significant distinction. With thinly veiled displeasure, Lady Mildred allowed Sir Rowan to escort her from the room, though not before casting a final, curious glance at the silver signet. Alone once more with Clara, the Duke's formidable demeanour softened. Forgive Lady Mildred's presumption. She means well after her fashion. Your defence of me is both unexpected and deeply appreciated, Clara replied, but I fear even your considerable influence cannot undo what has been done. Some stains once set refuse to lift. The Duke moved to stand beside her at the window. Snow continued to fall, muffling London's usual clamour. Miss Whitmore, what do you know of my family history? Surprised by the question, Clara hesitated. Only that the Ravenshire title is among the oldest and most respected in England. Indeed. Yet what few remember is that my grandfather, the 9th Duke, married a merchant's daughter amid tremendous scandal. Society predicted disaster. Instead, theirs became one of the most successful alliances of their generation. He turned to face her directly. The Harrow lineage has never feared defying convention when convention proves itself unworthy. Clara studied him, confusion evident in her expression. Why tell me this, Your Grace? Because I intend to offer you protection in the most definitive way possible, he replied, opening his hand to reveal the silver signet, not through mere patronage or public acknowledgement, but through marriage. The blood drained from Clara's face. Marriage? Your Grace, you cannot possibly— I assure you I can. A hint of amusement touched his features, though I confess I had planned a more conventional courtship. Unfortunately, the Countess's machinations have accelerated my timetable. Clara shook her head in disbelief. This is madness. You know nothing of me beyond what rumour has distorted. I know enough, the Duke replied simply. I know you maintained your dignity when lesser souls would have crumbled. I know you face each day with quiet courage, despite undeserved censure. I know your eyes reveal intelligence and compassion that society has been too blind to value. He placed the signet ring on the small table between them, an offering rather than an imposition. I do not expect an immediate answer. Consider it carefully, but know this. My proposal stems not from pity, but from genuine admiration. Clara stared at the ring, its silver surface catching the firelight. Even if I were to accept, which would be utter folly, the Baron would surely protest. His pride— "The Baron," interrupted the Duke, "is about to face far greater concerns than wounded pride. The evidence of his financial improprieties grows more damning by the day." As though summoned by his words, Sir Rowan reappeared at the doorway, his expression grave. "Your Grace, forgive the interruption, but an urgent message has arrived from the city. Baron Ashcombe has been arrested for fraud against his creditors." Clara gasped softly. "Arrested? But surely his connection to the Countess will prove insufficient protection," the Duke finished. "The Countess values advantage above loyalty. When she learns of his arrest, she will distance herself with remarkable speed." Sir Rowan nodded grimly. "Already done, Your Grace." The Countess was observed departing for her country estate not an hour past, leaving explicit instructions that any inquiries regarding the Baron should be directed to his solicitors, not to her household. A heavy silence filled the room as Clara absorbed these developments. The very people who had orchestrated her social destruction were now facing their own downfall. "The wheel turns," murmured the Duke. "Justice may arrive late, but it arrives nonetheless." Clara's gaze returned to the silver signet, its surface reflecting fragments of her transformed world. "And what of me? Am I to serve merely as the instrument of their humiliation?" "No, Miss Whitmore," the Duke replied solemnly. "You are to be the living embodiment of truth vindicated. The choice of how that vindication takes form rests entirely in your hands." Outside, the snow continued its silent descent, covering London's sins beneath a blanket of pristine white. Within the blue drawing room, Clara Whitmore faced the most consequential decision of her life, one that would rewrite not only her future, but the very nature of her past. The morning following the Duke's extraordinary proposal dawned with clarity rarely seen in London's winter. Clara stood at her modest lodgings window, watching sunlight transform frost-covered panes into diamond-like brilliance. The silver signet ring, which she had neither accepted nor refused, lay upon her dressing table, its presence both promise and peril. Mrs. Pembroke, her landlady, rapped gently at the door. "Miss Whitmore, a package has arrived for you. From Ravenshire House, if the livery is to be believed," Clara admitted the kindly widow, who bore a large box tied with silver ribbon. "Thank you, Mrs. Pembroke. Has there been any discussion among the other tenants regarding yesterday's visitor?" The older woman's eyes twinkled knowingly. "When the Duke of Ravenshire's carriage appears in Bloomsbury, tongues will wag, but I've set them straight. Told them His Grace likely sought your expertise on some historical matter, given your father's reputation as a scholar." Clara smiled gratefully. Her father's modest academic achievements had been all but forgotten since the scandal, yet Mrs. Pembroke had fabricated this plausible explanation to protect her dignity. "You are unfailingly kind," Clara murmured. After the landlady's departure, Clara carefully untied the ribbon. Within the box lay a gown of silver blue silk, elegant without ostentation, expensive without vulgarity. A small note accompanied it. "For this evening's engagement at Thornfield Concert Hall, a carriage shall call at 7, Ravenshire." Clara's fingers trembled as she touched the fabric. The Duke had mentioned no such engagement yesterday. This was his opening gambit, a public appearance carefully orchestrated to begin her reintroduction to society. Across London, in the stately confines of Ravenshire House, the Duke sat reviewing correspondence with Sir Rowan Linton. "The Baron's arrest has caused precisely the stir we anticipated," Sir Rowan reported. "His creditors are circling like vultures, each demanding priority. The Countess has issued a statement expressing profound shock at her dear friend's apparent duplicity." The Duke's mouth curved in a sardonic smile. "How expeditiously she distances herself, and the letters she circulated regarding Miss Whitmore? 3 hostesses have already sent discreet inquiries, asking whether the allegations might have been misinterpreted." Sir Rowan sorted through several envelopes. "Lady Mildred, to her credit, has been remarkably effective in sowing doubt about their authenticity. Self-interest proves a reliable motivator," the Duke remarked dryly. "Have the arrangements for this evening been completed?" Sir Rowan nodded. "The box at Thornfield is secured. Madame Renard's quartet will perform Vivaldi, Miss Whitmore's favourite, I believe you mentioned. Several key families have confirmed their attendance, including the Pembrokes, whose unmarried daughter once suffered similar calumny before making an advantageous match. Excellent. And the winter assembly preparations, proceeding as planned. Though I must ask, Adrian, Sir Rowan hesitated, dropping formality. Are you certain about this course? Marriage is rather an extreme solution to a matter of reputation. The Duke's grey eyes revealed nothing. My intentions toward Miss Whitmore extend well beyond mere rehabilitation of her standing. You barely know the woman, Sir Rowan protested gently. On the contrary, the Duke replied, I have observed her for months, her dignity in adversity, her kindness despite cruelty, her intelligence despite isolation. Some character reveals itself most truly under pressure, Rowan. Hers has proven exceptional. Before Sir Rowan could respond, the butler announced an unexpected visitor. Lady Mildred Greaves had returned, claiming urgent information. The Duke sighed. Show her in, but make it clear I have limited time. Lady Mildred swept into the study in a flurry of plum-coloured silk, her expression animated with the unmistakable excitement of fresh gossip. Your Grace, I have discovered something you simply must know regarding Miss Whitmore's situation. Indeed, the Duke's tone remained neutral. Please be seated, Lady Mildred. She perched at the edge of a chair, leaning forward conspiratorially. I have spoken with Mrs. Harrington. You recall the vicar's wife from Bedfordshire? It seems Miss Whitmore's father once tutored the Baron's younger brother. There was a childhood connection between the families that predates their London introduction. The Duke exchanged a glance with Sir Rowan. This hardly constitutes earth-shattering intelligence, Lady Mildred. But don't you see, she persisted. The Baron deliberately concealed this prior acquaintance, claiming to have met Miss Whitmore by chance at Lady Farthingham's musicale. This deception suggests premeditation. He sought her out specifically. Despite himself, the Duke's interest quickened. For what purpose, do you imagine? Lady Mildred's voice dropped to a dramatic whisper. Mrs. Harrington believes Professor Whitmore once possessed certain documents, family papers of the previous Baron, entrusted to him for scholarly review. Letters suggesting a prior secret marriage that might invalidate the current Baron's claim to the title. Sir Rowan straightened. That would explain the Baron's desperate need for the Countess's fortune, if his hold on the title was legally questionable, and his determination to destroy Miss Whitmore's credibility, the Duke added, pieces falling into place. If she possessed knowledge of these documents, precisely. Lady Mildred appeared delighted by their response. I have taken the liberty of inviting Mrs. Harrington to London. She arrives tomorrow and brings with her a letter written by Professor Whitmore shortly before his death, expressing concern about the troubling implications of his historical research. The Duke rose, decision made. Lady Mildred, your assistance in this matter is unexpectedly valuable. Sir Rowan will provide details regarding this evening's engagement at Thornfield Concert Hall. I trust you will attend. Understanding his implied instruction, Lady Mildred nodded eagerly. I wouldn't miss it for the world, Your Grace. After her departure, Sir Rowan turned to his friend. This changes matters considerably. If Clara Whitmore was targeted not for some imagined impropriety, but to suppress legitimate evidence of fraud, then her rehabilitation becomes not merely personal, but a matter of justice, the Duke finished. The question remains, does she know about these documents? At precisely 7 o'clock, the Ravenshire carriage arrived at Clara's lodgings. She descended the stairs in the silver-blue gown, her hair arranged in a simple but elegant style, adorned with a single pearl hairpin, a relic from happier days. Mrs. Pembroke watched her departure with misty eyes. Like a phoenix rising, she murmured to herself. God bless his Grace for seeing what others refused to see. The Duke awaited Clara inside the carriage, his formal evening attire enhancing his commanding presence. Miss Whitmore, he greeted her, his eyes warming with appreciation. You look magnificent. Your gift is far too generous, Clara replied, settling across from him. I cannot help but feel I am being dressed for a role in some elaborate theatrical production. Not a production, a restoration, he corrected. Tonight marks the beginning of society's reckoning with its hasty judgment. As the carriage rolled toward Thornfield, the Duke studied her with careful attention. I must ask you something of a delicate nature, Miss Whitmore. Your father's academic work. Did it ever involve historical research regarding the Ashcombe family line? Clara's surprise was evident. Indeed it did. Father spent his final year examining correspondence from the 7th Baron, documents suggesting a secret marriage to a French émigré during the Revolution. Her brow furrowed. How could you possibly know this? Lady Mildred has proven unexpectedly useful, the Duke replied. These documents, do they still exist? Clara hesitated, her fingers unconsciously touching the pearl hairpin. The Baron demanded their return after Father's death, claiming they were family property. I surrendered the papers, but, the Duke prompted gently. Father had made copies of the most significant letters. He believed they contained evidence that the current Baron's grandfather was born before his parents' legal marriage, potentially invalidating the inheritance. Clara's voice dropped to a whisper. Those copies are secured in my hairpin case, the one possession the Baron did not think to demand. The Duke's expression grew grave. This explains everything. His abrupt termination of your engagement, the Countess's vicious campaign, the manufactured letters. They sought to discredit you before you could reveal the truth. Clara stared out at the passing street lamps. I never threatened to reveal anything. I simply asked the Baron why he had insisted on the return of academic papers with no apparent monetary value. That question alone would have alarmed him, the Duke explained, particularly if he had already begun negotiations with the Countess. They arrived at Thornfield Concert Hall to find it illuminated and bustling. The Duke alighted first, offering his hand to assist Clara. Whispers immediately rippled through the gathering crowd as they recognized both his commanding figure and his unexpected companion. Courage, Miss Whitmore, he murmured, placing her hand firmly on his arm. Remember, you have nothing to apologize for and much to reclaim. As they ascended the stairs, Clara felt the weight of countless stares. The Countess Verena stood near the entrance, resplendent in emerald velvet. Her expression froze in shock at the sight of Clara on the Duke's arm. Your Grace, she managed, her voice honeyed despite her evident displeasure. What an unexpected pairing. I had not realized you patronized fallen scholars' daughters. The Duke's reply came with deadly quietness. I patronize justice, Countess, a concept you might do well to reacquaint yourself with, given recent developments. Before she could respond, he guided Clara past, leaving the Countess seething in their wake. Inside the concert hall, their entrance created a momentary lull in conversation before the buzz intensified tenfold. Sir Rowan appeared at their side, offering Clara a warm smile. Miss Whitmore, delighted to see you again. Your box awaits, Your Grace. As they settled into the Duke's private box, the most prominent in the hall, Clara became acutely aware of the opera glasses trained in their direction. Everyone is watching, she whispered. Let them watch, the Duke replied calmly. Let them see that the Duke of Ravenshire chooses his companions based on character rather than rumour. Lady Mildred entered their box moments later, her expression triumphant. Miss Whitmore, how lovely to see you in society again. Your gown is exquisite, Madame Delacroix's work, if I'm not mistaken. Clara inclined her head graciously, recognizing the olive branch being extended. You are most kind, Lady Mildred. As the musicians took their positions, the Duke leaned slightly toward Clara. The silver signet. Have you considered my proposal? I have thought of little else, she admitted quietly, but I cannot accept marriage as payment for rehabilitation. The imbalance would be too great. Then accept it on different terms, he suggested, his voice dropping further. Terms of mutual respect, shared purpose, and perhaps in time, genuine affection. The first notes of Vivaldi's Winter filled the hall, and Clara felt a strange resonance with the music, its stark beauty speaking to the frozen landscape of her recent existence, its passionate undercurrents promising thaw. In the interval, Sir Rowan approached with a sealed note. For Miss Whitmore, from Mrs. Harrington of Bedfordshire. Clara broke the waxen seal, reading quickly. Her face paled. She writes that additional Ashcombe family documents have been discovered in my father's old study at the vicarage. Documents that conclusively prove what Miss Whitmore is attempting to say, the Duke announced, loud enough for nearby listeners to hear, is that evidence has emerged vindicating her character completely. Evidence that certain parties attempted to suppress through character assassination. As whispers spread like wildfire, the Countess Verena appeared at the entrance to their box, her composure visibly cracking. Your Grace, I demand a private word regarding these slanderous insinuations. Demands carry little weight when issued by those who forge letters to destroy innocent reputations, the Duke replied coolly. But by all means, Countess, let us discuss forgery, fraud, and the curious timing of the Baron's sudden access to funds that coincided with his abandonment of Miss Whitmore. The Countess blanched, her green eyes darting nervously to the gathering crowd. This is neither the time nor place. On the contrary, interrupted the Duke, rising to his full height. "This is precisely the time and place to announce that Miss Clara Whitmore has done me the great honor of accepting my hand in marriage." Clara gasped softly, though she managed to maintain her composure as all eyes turned to her. The Duke had forced her hand, yet somehow, in that moment of public declaration, her heart found its answer. "The wedding will take place at Ravenshire Chapel next month," the Duke continued, his hand finding Clara's. "I trust society will join us in celebrating the union of truth with justice, virtues too long separated in recent discourse." As the Countess retreated in humiliated silence and congratulations began to flow, some genuine, others mere social expediency, Clara leaned close to the Duke's ear. "I do not recall accepting your proposal, Your Grace," she whispered, though her eyes held no reproach. "A tactical necessity," he murmured in response, "though if you wish to refuse me now, I shall announce my mistake with equal publicity." Clara studied his face, the strength in his features, the unexpected tenderness in his eyes. "No," she finally said, "I believe I shall hold you to your word, Your Grace. Truth and justice indeed deserve proper union." The Duke's smile, rarely seen in public, transformed his austere countenance. "As do we, Miss Whitmore, as do we." As Vivaldi's harmonies resumed, Clara felt the first genuine peace she had known in months. The path ahead remained uncertain, fraught with society's judgment and the Countess's certain vengeance. But for the first time, she would not walk it alone. The silver signet would find its home upon her finger, not as a symbol of rescue, but as a testament to recognition of worth, a worth that had never diminished, despite all attempts to tarnish it. The announcement of Clara Whitmore's engagement to the Duke of Ravensshire ignited London society like a powder keg. Within 48 hours, the tale had transmuted through countless retellings, each more elaborate than the last. Clara found herself simultaneously elevated and exposed, no longer shunned, yet subjected to scrutiny more intense than even her disgrace had provoked. "They are saying," reported Mrs. Pembroke as she poured morning tea, "that you bewitched his Grace with some foreign concoction. Ridiculous, of course, but Lady Dunnington's maid swears she overheard it at the modistes." Clara sipped her tea with outward calm. "People will believe what comforts their understanding of the world, Mrs. Pembroke. The notion that a disgraced woman might be chosen for her character, rather than despite it, proves too radical for many to accept." The landlady patted Clara's hand affectionately. "Well, I for one couldn't be prouder, though I dare say we shall miss you when you remove to Ravenshire House." This imminent change of residence, scheduled for the following day, had occupied much of Clara's thoughts. The Duke had insisted upon propriety. She would reside with his aunt, Lady Helena Harrow, who had arrived from Bath specifically to chaperone her future niece. A soft knock at the door heralded the arrival of Sir Rowan Linton, bearing yet another parcel from the Duke. "Miss Whitmore, good morning. His Grace sends his regards and this modest token." The modest token proved to be a pearl necklace of exceptional quality, accompanied by a note. "For this afternoon's interview with Lady Helena, she values punctuality, honesty, and proper ornamentation, in that precise order. Ravenshire." Sir Rowan cleared his throat. "I should warn you, Miss Whitmore, that Lady Helena's approval is not easily won. She raised his Grace after his parents' untimely death and remains his most trusted adviser." "Then I shall endeavour to present myself honestly, Sir Rowan." Clara carefully returned the pearls to their box. "Though, I confess, these constant gifts make me uneasy. I did not accept his Grace's proposal for material advancement." "He knows that," Sir Rowan assured her, "which is precisely why he holds you in such esteem." As Sir Rowan departed, another visitor arrived, one far less welcome. Lady Mildred burst into Clara's modest sitting room, her expression a curious mixture of excitement and concern. "My dear Miss Whitmore, you must prepare yourself. The Countess has made a most terrible accusation in this morning's society pages." She thrust a newspaper into Clara's hands, jabbing at a particular column with dramatic emphasis. The item, written with malicious delicacy, suggested that a certain recently elevated young lady had gained her aristocratic fiancé through the strategic deployment of compromising documents, rather than genuine affection. It further implied that blackmail rather than romance explained the otherwise inexplicable match. Clara's hands trembled slightly, but her voice remained steady. "The Countess grows desperate. This transparent attempt to reframe the narrative will only damage her credibility further." "But don't you see," Lady Mildred pressed, "she's suggesting the very documents that vindicate you are being used as leverage against the Duke. It's diabolically clever. transforming your exoneration into a new scandal. Before Clara could respond, Mrs. Pembroke announced another caller. Mrs. Harrington had arrived from Bedfordshire, bearing the promised Ashcombe family papers. The vicar's wife entered, a sturdy woman with kind eyes and a resolute bearing, clutching a weathered leather portfolio. "Miss Whitmore, what joy to see you looking so well despite these tribulations," she exclaimed, embracing Clara warmly. "I have brought every document your dear father entrusted to my husband's safekeeping." The current Baron never thought to inquire at the vicarage, assuming all papers remained in London. As the three women examined the documents, the true extent of Baron Ashcombe's precarious situation became apparent. Professor Whitmore had uncovered incontrovertible evidence of a legitimate prior marriage by the Baron's grandfather, rendering the current Baron's claim to the title legally void. "No wonder he broke your engagement so abruptly," Mrs. Harrington observed. "Once he realized your father had documented this family secret, you became a liability rather than an asset." Lady Mildred's eyes gleamed with the thrill of fresh intelligence. "And the Countess provided both financial salvation and social protection for a price. A price he has failed to pay," came a deep voice from the doorway. The Duke of Ravensshire stood there, his tall figure filling the modest entrance. All three women rose in surprise at his unannounced arrival. "Your Grace," Clara acknowledged, her cheeks colouring slightly. "We were just examining the evidence of Ashcombe's fraudulent claim," he finished, crossing to examine the documents. "My solicitors will be most interested in these papers. They confirm what we suspected. The Baron has been living under false pretenses for years." Lady Mildred could scarcely contain herself. "Then his arrest for financial improprieties is merely the beginning. He could lose everything, title, lands, position." "Indeed," the Duke replied coolly, "though our concern is not his downfall, but Miss Whitmore's vindication." He turned to Clara, his expression softening almost imperceptibly. "I've come to escort you to meet Lady Helena. She is not known for her patience." As Clara gathered her belongings, including the pearl necklace, Mrs. Harrington drew the Duke aside. "Your Grace, there is one document you should see privately." She extracted a sealed letter bearing Professor Whitmore's handwriting, addressed to Clara to be delivered in the event of her marriage. The Duke accepted the letter with a grave nod, slipping it into his coat without comment. The Ravensshire carriage traversed London's fashionable districts before stopping at Berkeley Square, where Lady Helena maintained an elegant townhouse. Clara felt her courage falter momentarily as she regarded the imposing facade. "She will approve of you," the Duke assured her quietly, "though she may take pains to conceal that fact initially." Lady Helena Harrow proved to be a formidable woman in her 60s, with silver hair arranged in an elaborate coiffure and penetrating blue eyes that missed nothing. She received them in a drawing-room appointed with exquisite taste, her posture ramrod straight despite her advanced years. "So," she began without preamble, "you are the young woman who has captured my nephew's usually impenetrable heart. Sit down, child. Let me look at you properly." Clara seated herself with practiced grace, conscious of Lady Helena's evaluative gaze. The Duke remained standing, his expression betraying nothing of his thoughts. "The pearls suit you," Lady Helena observed. "Simple, elegant, without ostentation. Adrian always had an eye for appropriate adornment." "They are indeed beautiful," Clara replied, "though I confess I feel undeserving of such generosity." "Humility is commendable," Lady Helena stated, "but false modesty is tedious. You clearly possess qualities my nephew values, or he would not have chosen you. The question is whether those qualities will withstand the scrutiny and demands of your new position." The Duke cleared his throat. "Aunt Helena, perhaps we might dispense with the interrogation and proceed to acquaintance." "Nonsense," his aunt replied crisply. "Miss Whitmore understands the necessity of this conversation, don't you, my dear?" "I do," Clara affirmed. "Your concern for your nephew's happiness honors you, Lady Helena. I assure you, I entered this engagement with full awareness of its implications, both personal and social." Lady Helena's eyebrow arched. "Did you indeed? Tell me then, are you prepared for the Countess Verina's continued machinations, for the whispers that will follow you into every ballroom, for the constant scrutiny of your every action as Duchess of Ravensshire?" "I have already endured the worst society can inflict," Clara replied with quiet dignity. "After public humiliation and unjust disgrace, mere whispers hold little terror. As for the responsibilities of my future position, I approach them with appropriate gravity and determination to prove worthy A flicker of approval crossed Lady Helena's austere features. "Well answered. Now, Adrian, leave us. Miss Whitmore and I have matters to discuss that require no masculine interference." The Duke hesitated momentarily before bowing to both women. "I shall return in 1 hour. Try not to terrorize her excessively, Aunt." After his departure, Lady Helena's demeanor softened marginally. "Now, my dear, we may speak frankly. You should know that Adrian has never acted impulsively in matters of consequence. His proposal, while perhaps seeming sudden to society, represents careful consideration." Clara's surprise must have shown, for Lady Helena continued, "Oh yes, he has been aware of your situation for months. The injustice of your treatment offended his sense of propriety long before he developed a personal interest." "I had no idea," Clara murmured. "Naturally not. Adrian observes much and reveals little." Lady Helena poured tea with practiced precision. "What you must understand is that as his Duchess, you will wield considerable influence. People will seek your favor, study your preferences, emulate your choices. This power can be wielded for tremendous good or squandered on trivial social victories." "I have no interest in social victories," Clara assured her. "My ambitions are far more modest." "Then they must expand," Lady Helena declared firmly. "False modesty serves no one. You will be Duchess of Ravenshire. Embrace the responsibility and the opportunity such position provides." As their conversation continued, Clara found herself warming to this formidable woman. Beneath Lady Helena's intimidating exterior lay genuine concern for her nephew and a pragmatic approach to navigating society's treacherous waters. Their tête-à-tête was interrupted by the unexpected arrival of the Countess Verena herself. She swept into Lady Helena's drawing room without proper announcement, her emerald gown rustling dramatically. "Lady Helena, forgive this intrusion, but I bear news too urgent to await proper social channels." Her triumphant gaze fell upon Clara. "Oh, Miss Whitmore, how providential to find you here." Lady Helena's expression cooled noticeably. "Countess Verena, I do not recall issuing you an invitation." "Certain circumstances transcend social niceties," the Countess replied with affected gravity. "I've come regarding your nephew's impending alliance." Clara rose, intending to excuse herself, but Lady Helena motioned her firmly back to her seat. "Miss Whitmore remains. Whatever you wish to say may be said in her presence." The Countess smiled thinly. "As you wish. I merely thought to spare her embarrassment." She withdrew a letter from her reticule. "This arrived at my residence this morning. A most concerning communication from Baron Ashcombe's solicitor." "Indeed?" Lady Helena's tone betrayed nothing but polite disinterest. "It seems certain documents regarding the Baron's family history have gone missing," the Countess continued, watching Clara intently. "Documents that coincidentally appeared just as Miss Whitmore secured her engagement to your nephew. The implication, while distasteful, seems rather clear." Clara felt color rising in her cheeks, but maintained her composure. Lady Helena's response, however, proved unexpected. "How fascinating," the older woman remarked, setting down her teacup with deliberate precision. "I was unaware that solicitors now send official legal correspondence to social acquaintances, rather than to the relevant authorities. Perhaps the legal profession has relaxed its standards since my day." The Countess faltered slightly. "The Baron naturally sought my counsel in this delicate matter." "From his prison cell?" Lady Helena inquired with exquisite politeness. "How devoted of you to maintain such intimate communication with a man charged with fraud." Before the Countess could respond, Lady Helena continued, "More to the point, Countess, any documents regarding the Ashcombe lineage would be of far greater concern to the current holder of the title than to my nephew. Unless, of course, you suggest the Duke of Ravenshire, whose family fortune and position rank among the most secure in England, would stoop to blackmail for the hand of a woman he could have obtained through legitimate proposal." The Countess's composure cracked visibly. "I merely thought—" "No," Lady Helena interrupted coldly. "You did not think. You plotted rather clumsily to discredit Miss Whitmore once again. The effort reflects poorly on your intelligence and worse on your character." Rising with regal dignity, Lady Helena pulled the bell cord. "My footman will show you out, Countess. I suggest you reconsider your strategy. The Duke of Ravenshire's future Duchess stands under his protection, and mine. Further attacks will be met with consequences far beyond social ostracism." As the Countess departed in humiliated silence, Lady Helena turned to Clara with unexpected warmth. "You conducted yourself admirably, my dear. Not a single intemperate word or undignified gesture. Adrian has chosen well." Clara released a shaky breath. Her accusations, the newspaper item, they will continue, won't they? For a time, Lady Helena acknowledged, until a new scandal captures society's fickle attention. But remember this, you have truth, documentation, and the Ravenshire name as your armor. The Countess has only innuendo and diminishing credibility. When the Duke returned, he found his fiancée and his aunt engaged in detailed discussion of the seasonal charitable works traditionally undertaken by the Duchess of Ravenshire. "I see you've survived the Inquisition," he observed with the barest hint of a smile. "Indeed," Lady Helena replied. "Miss Whitmore has proven quite satisfactory, though we were briefly interrupted by the Countess Verena, bearing spurious accusations." The Duke's expression darkened. "What accusations?" "Nothing of consequence," Lady Helena assured him. "I dispatched her rather effectively. But you should know, Adrian, that your enemies grow increasingly desperate. The wedding date perhaps should be advanced." As Clara departed Berkeley Square that afternoon, the silver signet ring now firmly upon her finger, she felt both fortified and forewarned. Lady Helena's approval had bolstered her confidence, but the Countess's unexpected appearance confirmed that the path to vindication would be neither smooth nor swift. In her pocket lay Professor Whitmore's sealed letter, entrusted to her by the Duke as they left. "Read it privately," he had advised. "Whatever its contents, know that my commitment remains unaltered." The wax seal, impressed with her father's modest scholarly crest, seemed to hold the weight of the past and the uncertainty of the future in its fragile form. Snow blanketed London in hushed whiteness the morning Clara relocated to Lady Helena's Berkeley Square residence. The move, accomplished with quiet efficiency, marked the first tangible step toward her transformed future. Her meager possessions, a trunk of modest clothing, her father's books, and a small case of personal mementos, seemed almost laughably inadequate for a future duchess. "Your new wardrobe arrives this afternoon," Lady Helena informed her over breakfast. "Madame Delacroix has worked miracles in limited time. The wedding announcement appears in this morning's papers, and the ceremony is now scheduled for 3 weeks hence, rather than next month." Clara nodded, still adjusting to the swiftness of these developments. "Has there been any further word regarding the Baron's situation?" "His preliminary hearing is set for tomorrow," Lady Helena replied. "Adrian will attend, though you naturally shall not. The documents your father preserved have been submitted to the proper authorities. The Baron's solicitors are reportedly attempting to negotiate a private settlement to protect his claim to the title," Clara surmised. "Precisely. Though such efforts appear futile given the evidence." Lady Helena studied her future niece with shrewd assessment. "You've not yet opened your father's letter." Clara started in surprise. "How did you—" "The seal remains intact in your reticule," the older woman observed. "Your reluctance suggests fear of its contents." "Perhaps," Clara admitted. "My father's final months were difficult. His scholarly obsession with the Ashcombe lineage consumed him, yet he never explained its personal significance." Lady Helena's expression softened marginally. "Some truths require proper timing for their revelation. Perhaps today you might find the courage to discover yours." Their breakfast was interrupted by the arrival of Sir Rowan Linton, bearing news of disturbing developments. "Forgive the early intrusion, Lady Helena, Miss Whitmore. The Duke requested I inform you immediately. The Countess has escalated her campaign." He produced a broadsheet, freshly printed and still damp with ink. The headline blazed in bold type: "Scholarly Blackmail, the True Nature of a Mercenary Engagement." Clara's hands trembled as she accepted the paper. The anonymous article detailed a fictitious account of how the desperate daughter of an obsessed academic had leveraged compromising family documents to entrap one of England's most eligible peers. It further alleged that Professor Whitmore had fabricated evidence regarding the Ashcombe lineage in a deranged attempt to discredit a noble family. "This is unconscionable," Lady Helena declared, her voice tight with controlled fury. "Where is Adrian?" "Meeting with his solicitors," Sir Rowan replied grimly. "The libel is so explicit that legal action seems inevitable. However, the publisher claims ignorance of the author's identity, though the Countess's involvement is scarcely in doubt." Clara carefully refolded the broadsheet. "The accusation against my father cuts deeper than any directed at me. He was a man of impeccable academic integrity." "Which is precisely why the Countess targets him," Lady Helena observed. "She seeks to undermine the credibility of both the messenger and the message." Sir Rowan cleared his throat. "There is one additional development. The Baron has offered a substantial sum for the return of all documents relating to the Ashcombe lineage. with the provision that Miss Whitmore sign a statement disavowing any knowledge of their authenticity. A transparent attempt to discredit the evidence, Lady Helena scoffed. What was Adrian's response? His Grace suggested the Baron redirect his financial resources toward restitution of his creditors, Sir Rowan replied with the ghost of a smile, in somewhat less diplomatic language. After Sir Rowan's departure, Clara retreated to her new chambers, a spacious suite decorated in soothing blues and silver. There, with hands still unsteady, she finally broke the seal on her father's letter. "My dearest Clara," the letter began, "if you are reading these words, you have found a husband worthy of your excellence, and for that I am profoundly grateful. There are truths I have withheld, not from lack of trust, but from desire to protect you from the burdens that have defined my existence. The Ashcombe family history has never been merely academic pursuit to me. Your mother, my beloved Eleonora, was the legitimate daughter of the 7th Baron Ashcombe and his first wife, Madeleine Laurent. Their marriage, conducted in exile during the French Revolution, was concealed to protect Madeleine's family, but fully documented by the chaplain who performed the ceremony. When the 7th Baron returned to England, he was pressured into a proper marriage to Lady Catherine Wells, despite his existing union. Your mother was raised as the ward of distant relatives, her true parentage hidden to avoid scandal. The current Baron's grandfather, born to Lady Catherine, inherited the title illegally, as your mother was the legitimate firstborn. I discovered this truth shortly after your mother's death, finding her birth documentation among her personal effects. My subsequent research confirmed what I had suspected. You, my daughter, are the rightful heir to the Ashcombe title and estates. The current Baron learned of this when I approached him privately, seeking not to claim the inheritance, but merely acknowledgement of your mother's legitimacy. His response was to threaten ruin should I ever reveal these facts. I acquiesced then, believing your happiness and security paramount. I entrust this knowledge to you now, not as a burden, but as your birthright. Whether you choose to pursue this claim rests entirely in your hands. Know that your mother would be immensely proud of the woman you have become, regardless of titles or estates. With eternal love and faith in your judgment, your father Clara sat motionless, the letter trembling in her grasp. The revelation explained so much: her father's obsessive research, the Baron's extreme reaction to their engagement, his desperate attempts to discredit both Whitmores. The implications staggered her. By rights, she, not the Baron, should hold the Ashcombe title and estates. A gentle knock at her door roused her from stupefaction. Lady Helena entered, her expression softening at Clara's evident distress. The letter contained revelations, I see. Wordlessly, Clara extended the pages. Lady Helena read in silence, her formidable composure wavering only slightly as she absorbed the extraordinary disclosure. "This changes matters considerably," she finally stated, returning the letter. "Have you decided how to proceed?" "I scarcely know," Clara admitted. "This truth seems almost too fantastical to credit, yet it explains everything. The Baron's desperation, the Countess's viciousness, they feared not merely scandal, but complete dispossession." "Adrian must be informed immediately," Lady Helena declared. "This knowledge fundamentally alters the legal approach to your situation." Clara rose, suddenly decisive. "No, not yet. I must consider the implications carefully before sharing this with anyone, even His Grace." Lady Helena's eyebrow arched in surprise. "You would withhold such significant information from your fiancé?" "Temporarily," Clara affirmed, "until I determine the proper course. The Duke proposed marriage to restore my reputation and secure justice. This revelation introduces complications that might influence his perspective, or worse, suggest I accepted his offer to advance a hidden agenda." Though clearly disapproving, Lady Helena nodded. "You have until this evening. Adrian dines with us at 7, and this information cannot remain concealed beyond that point. The legal ramifications are too significant." Throughout that long afternoon, Clara paced her chambers, mind a-whirl with competing considerations. The newly delivered gowns, exquisite creations befitting a duchess, lay ignored upon her bed as she wrestled with her father's revelation. If she pursued her rightful claim, would it not appear that she had indeed engineered her engagement for material advantage? Yet if she concealed her lineage, was she not perpetuating the very fraud her father had uncovered? At precisely 6 o'clock, Clara made her decision. Selecting the simplest of her new gowns, a silver-blue creation that echoed the color of the Ravenshire crest, she penned a brief note requesting a private audience with the Duke before dinner. He arrived promptly at 6:30, his expression grave. Lady Helena mentioned urgent matters requiring discussion. "Is all well, Miss Whitmore?" Clara gestured toward the small sitting room adjoining her chambers. "I have discovered information that may significantly impact our arrangement, Your Grace. Before we proceed further, you must be made aware of certain facts regarding my heritage." With steady hands, she presented her father's letter. The Duke read in silence, his expression inscrutable. When he finally looked up, his grey eyes held an emotion Clara could not immediately identify. "You are the legitimate heir to the Ashcombe title and estates," he stated flatly. "This explains the Baron's extraordinary efforts to discredit your family. It also raises questions about my acceptance of your proposal," Clara responded quietly. "I fear you might now perceive ulterior motives where none existed." The Duke studied her with penetrating intensity. "When did you become aware of this information?" "This morning, when I finally opened my father's letter. And your first instinct was to inform me, despite the risk to our engagement?" Clara nodded. "Honesty between us seems essential, regardless of consequences. If this revelation alters your perception of our arrangement—" "It alters nothing," the Duke interrupted, his voice suddenly gentle, "except perhaps my admiration for your integrity. Many would have concealed this knowledge until after the marriage was secured." Relief washed through Clara, followed immediately by uncertainty. "But surely this complicates matters. As your wife, should I pursue my rightful claim to another title and estate?" "The complication is legal, not personal," the Duke replied. "The Ravenshire solicitors will determine the most appropriate approach. What matters is that you did not conceal this information, despite abundant opportunity and motivation to do so." He moved closer, taking her hands in his. "Clara, when I proposed marriage, I offered not merely my name, but my complete trust. Your forthright disclosure confirms that trust was well placed." For the first time he addressed her by her given name, the formality between them diminishing in this moment of profound honesty. Clara felt the subtle shift in their relationship, a deepening beyond arrangement toward genuine partnership. Their conversation was interrupted by Lady Helena's summons to dinner. Throughout the evening, Clara sensed the Duke's gaze returning to her with new consideration. Their engagement, begun as an act of justice, had transformed into something more complex and potentially more meaningful. As coffee was served in the drawing room, Sir Rowan arrived with fresh intelligence. "The Baron has made a desperate countermove. He claims to possess letters written by Professor Whitmore, admitting to academic fraud, specifically the fabrication of evidence regarding the Ashcombe lineage." "Preposterous," the Duke declared. "No such letters exist. Nevertheless, he threatens to publish them unless all claims regarding his legitimacy are withdrawn," Sir Rowan continued. "His solicitor delivered this ultimatum an hour ago, demanding response by morning." Clara's composure nearly faltered. "He would posthumously defame my father to protect his fraudulent claim? He faces not merely financial ruin, but complete social annihilation," Lady Helena observed. "Desperate men employ desperate measures." The Duke's expression hardened. "Sir Rowan, inform the Baron's solicitor that his client's threat constitutes additional evidence of criminal conspiracy. The Ravenshire solicitors will present all documentation regarding the Ashcombe succession to the Lord Chancellor tomorrow morning, including Professor Whitmore's letter identifying Clara as the legitimate heir." Clara gasped softly. "Your Grace, Adrian, are you certain this is wise? Once this claim becomes public, many will assume our engagement served merely to advance my position." "Let them assume what they will," the Duke replied firmly. "The truth will eventually silence even the most determined detractors." As Sir Rowan departed with these instructions, a footman announced another visitor. Lady Mildred Greaves had arrived, bearing news she claimed could not wait until morning. "The Countess has left London," she announced breathlessly upon entering. "Her household departed for her country estate in Kent this afternoon, taking an unusual quantity of luggage for a brief retreat." The Duke and Lady Helena exchanged significant glances. "Flight," Lady Helena remarked. "The first admission of guilt." "But why now?" Clara wondered. "What precipitated this sudden departure?" "Perhaps," the Duke suggested, "the discovery that her financial entanglement with the Baron extended beyond mere social alliance. My solicitors have uncovered evidence suggesting the Countess provided funds for the Baron's defense, funds she could ill afford to lose." Lady Mildred's eyes widened with delicious scandal. "Then her attacks on Miss Whitmore served not merely jealousy, but self-preservation. If the Baron loses his position, the Countess loses her investment," Lady Helena finished. "A considerable sum, by all accounts." As the evening concluded, Clara found herself momentarily alone with the Duke in Lady Helena's elegant entry hall. The silver signet ring on her finger caught the lamplight, its engraved crest symbolizing not merely their engagement, but the unexpected alliance of their causes. "Tomorrow will bring challenges," the Duke cautioned. "Once your claim becomes public knowledge, society will divide in its assessment of our engagement. Many will question your motives, and by extension, my judgment." "I am prepared," Clara assured him, though her heart quailed at the prospect of fresh scandal. "The truth, however uncomfortable, must prevail." The Duke's expression softened as he studied her resolved countenance. "In the brief time of our acquaintance, Miss Whitmore, you have displayed courage that many born to privilege never develop in a lifetime. I find myself increasingly fortunate in our arrangement." He raised her gloved hand to his lips, a gesture of formal courtesy transformed by the warmth in his grey eyes into something far more intimate. "Until tomorrow, then. Sleep well, knowing that whatever storms arise, you no longer face them alone." As Clara ascended the stairs to her chambers, the sealed Ashcombe documents secure in their leather folio beneath her pillow, she felt both the weight of impending conflict and the strange lightness of shared burden. Tomorrow would indeed bring challenges, perhaps even greater humiliation, but for the first time since her father's death, she would meet adversity with a powerful ally by her side. Dawn broke with crystalline clarity over London, the winter sun casting long shadows across snow-covered squares. Clara stood at her window, watching the city awaken, acutely aware that by nightfall, her life would again be transformed. The Ravenshire solicitors would present her claim to the Ashcombe title before the Lord Chancellor that morning, a legal proceeding that would inevitably generate fresh scandal. "Your new morning dress, miss," announced the lady's maid Lady Helena had assigned to her, "and this just arrived for you." The maid presented a small velvet box bearing the Ravenshire crest. Within lay a brooch of silver filigree surrounding a single perfect pearl, elegant in its simplicity, significant in its symbolism. The accompanying note read simply, "Truth adorns better than pretense. Wear this today. A." Clara pinned the brooch at her throat, drawing strength from this tangible evidence of the Duke's support. The morning dress, a creation of dove-grey silk with subtle silver embroidery, had clearly been selected to convey dignified determination rather than ostentation. Breakfast proved a subdued affair. Lady Helena reviewed the day's strategy with military precision. "Adrian has already departed for his solicitor's chambers. You will remain here until midday, then join him at Ravenshire House for the formal announcement regarding your heritage. Sir Rowan will escort you." "Has there been any response from the Baron to last night's message?" Clara inquired. "None directly," Lady Helena replied, "though his solicitors requested an urgent meeting this morning, a request Adrian declined. The time for negotiation has passed." As Lady Helena spoke, the butler entered bearing a silver salver. "A message for Miss Whitmore delivered by special courier." The envelope bore no crest or identification. Clara broke the plain wax seal with steady fingers, though her heart quickened at the sight of the distinctive handwriting within. "Miss Whitmore," the letter began, "circumstances compel me to address you directly, bypassing the formalities that would normally prohibit such communication. By now you have undoubtedly been made aware of certain claims regarding your maternal lineage, claims that threaten the very foundation of my position and heritage. I propose a private meeting to discuss terms that might prove mutually beneficial. Your legitimate concerns regarding your mother's recognition could be addressed without the unnecessary upheaval of public legal proceedings. The Duke of Ravenshire, while well-intentioned, perhaps fails to appreciate the delicacy of aristocratic succession disputes. A carriage will await your convenience at the corner of Berkeley Square at 11 o'clock. I give you my word as a gentleman that you will be treated with utmost respect and returned safely within 2 hours. Consider carefully before rejecting this opportunity for discreet resolution." Baron Ashcombe. Clara passed the letter to Lady Helena, whose expression darkened as she read. "Absolutely not," the older woman declared. "This transparent attempt to separate you from Adrian's protection borders on desperation. You cannot seriously consider accepting." "On the contrary," Clara replied thoughtfully, "I believe I must." Lady Helena stared in astonishment. "Have you taken leave of your senses? To meet privately with the man who orchestrated your disgrace offers an opportunity to observe his true state of mind," Clara finished. "The Baron would not risk such a meeting unless truly desperate. Perhaps he might reveal information valuable to our cause." "Out of the question," Lady Helena insisted. Adrian would never permit such recklessness, which is precisely why he need not know until afterward, Clara countered with newfound assertiveness. Lady Helena, I have spent months as passive victim of others' machinations. This opportunity to actively confront my accuser cannot be ignored. Their argument continued for several minutes before Lady Helena reluctantly acknowledged the potential merit in Clara's reasoning. However, she stipulated firmly, you shall not go unprotected. Sir Rowan must accompany you, discreetly, but present nonetheless. The Baron would never speak freely with Sir Rowan present, Clara objected. Then he shall follow separately, Lady Helena decided, and you will carry this. She withdrew a small silver whistle from her desk. A single blast will bring assistance immediately. Thus equipped and with extreme reluctance from Lady Helena, Clara departed Berkeley Square at precisely 11 o'clock. The promised carriage awaited, an unmarked conveyance of respectable appearance. Sir Rowan followed at a discreet distance, his expression grave with concern. To Clara's surprise, the carriage delivered her not to some clandestine location, but to the Baron's London residence, a handsome but relatively modest townhouse in Mayfair. A servant escorted her directly to a well-appointed study, where Baron Ashcombe awaited. The Baron had aged visibly since their last meeting 6 months earlier. His once imposing figure appeared diminished, his complexion sallow, his eyes haunted by fear, poorly disguised as hauteur. Miss Whitmore, he acknowledged, gesturing toward a chair, I appreciate your willingness to meet privately. My willingness stems from curiosity rather than cooperation, Clara replied coolly, remaining standing. What possible, mutually beneficial terms could you offer after your systematic destruction of my reputation? The Baron flinched slightly at her directness. Circumstances have been regrettable. However, with goodwill on both sides. Goodwill? Clara interrupted, her voice steady despite her internal turmoil. You severed our engagement without explanation, fabricated rumors of impropriety, and allowed society to condemn me as disgraced. Recently, you threatened to posthumously defame my father. Where precisely might I locate evidence of your goodwill? The past cannot be undone, the Baron replied stiffly. I propose we focus on practical resolution. Your claim to the Ashcombe title, while perhaps technically valid, would precipitate years of costly litigation, public scandal, and mutual damage. Clara studied him dispassionately. You acknowledge the validity of my claim, then? The Baron hesitated, clearly choosing his words carefully. I acknowledge that certain documentation exists which, presented selectively, might create legal complications. However, not complications, Clara corrected. Justice. Recognition of my mother's legitimate birth and rightful place in the Ashcombe lineage. For a moment, genuine emotion broke through the Baron's careful facade. Do you truly believe the Ton would accept a woman, particularly one whose reputation has already suffered, as rightful holder of an ancient barony? The legal proceedings would become a public spectacle, benefiting no one but scandal-mongers. Clara recognized the first hint of vulnerability in his argument. Your concern centers not on legal outcome, but on public humiliation. My concern, the Baron countered, extends to practical realities. What advantage would you gain from years of litigation? As Duchess of Ravenshire, you will occupy a position far superior to that of Baroness Ashcombe. Why pursue this claim when you have already secured such an advantageous match? The implication that her engagement served merely social advancement struck Clara like a physical blow, yet she maintained her composure. Perhaps because justice transcends advantage, perhaps because my mother's identity deserves acknowledgement regardless of my marital prospects. The Baron's expression hardened. Noble sentiments, but impractical. I offer concrete terms. A formal statement acknowledging your mother's legitimacy as daughter of the 7th Baron, a substantial financial settlement, and my public apology for any misunderstandings regarding your character. In exchange for, Clara prompted, though she already anticipated his demand, your signed renunciation of all claims to the Ashcombe title and estates, he confirmed, properly witnessed and legally binding. Clara allowed silence to stretch between them, strategically prolonging the Baron's discomfort. And the Countess Verena? Would she also offer apology for her systematic campaign against my reputation? The Baron's expression tightened. The Countess and I no longer maintain close association. Her actions were undertaken independently. How convenient, Clara observed. When your mutual conspiracy proves disadvantageous, suddenly your collaboration dissolves. You speak of conspiracy, yet align yourself with the Duke of Ravenshire to pursue your claim, the Baron countered. Is that not similarly strategic? Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks, but kept her voice level. The difference, Baron Ashcombe, lies in honest intent. My engagement to the Duke preceded any revelation regarding my heritage. Your alliance with the Countess, however, was predicated on mutual deception from its inception. Their exchange was interrupted by the unexpected entry of a footman. Begging your pardon, my lord, but the Duke of Ravenshire has just arrived and insists upon immediate admittance. The Baron blanched visibly. The Duke? How could he possibly? The answer arrived before the question completed, as the Duke himself strode into the study, his expression thunderous. Sir Rowan followed close behind, looking simultaneously apologetic toward Clara and grimly satisfied by the Duke's intervention. Your Grace, the Baron stammered, rising hastily, this unexpected visit is considerably less unexpected than your audacity in arranging a private meeting with my fiancée, the Duke interrupted coldly. Miss Whitmore, are you unharmed? Perfectly well, Clara assured him, though her heart raced at this unforeseen development. Sir Rowan maintained discreet surveillance throughout. At Lady Helena's insistence, Sir Rowan clarified, though it was my decision to alert His Grace when the destination became apparent. The Duke's penetrating gaze returned to the Baron. I find it difficult to imagine what compelling argument you believed might sway Miss Whitmore when all previous attempts at intimidation have failed. Not intimidation, but compromise, the Baron protested. A private resolution benefiting all parties. A resolution predicated on continued suppression of truth, the Duke observed. How disappointingly predictable. The Baron's composure cracked further. Your Grace, surely you understand the practicalities involved. Miss Whitmore's claim, while perhaps technically valid, would generate scandal damaging to all concerned. On the contrary, the Duke replied, I find truth rarely damages those who embrace it willingly. The scandal, Baron Ashcombe, lies not in Miss Whitmore's legitimate heritage, but in your family's systematic concealment of it. Clara stepped forward, addressing the Duke directly. The Baron has offered acknowledgement of my mother's legitimacy and financial compensation in exchange for renunciation of my claim to the title. A generous concession, considering the legal complexities involved, the Baron interjected quickly. The Duke's expression remained implacable. It seems, Baron, that you fundamentally misunderstand both Miss Whitmore's character and my own. Neither of us trades justice for convenience. Justice? The Baron gave a hollow laugh. Where was justice when my grandfather inherited a title and estates encumbered with debt? When he spent decades restoring the family's position through prudent management and advantageous alliances? Would you see that lifelong work undone because a forgotten marriage certificate suddenly emerges? For the first time, Clara glimpsed the genuine fear beneath the Baron's hauteur, not merely fear of personal disgrace, but of ancestral legacy demolished. Despite herself, she felt a flicker of reluctant compassion. The Duke of Ravenshire's solicitors presented my claim to the Lord Chancellor this morning, she stated quietly. The legal process has begun. However, I am not unsympathetic to concerns regarding legacy and heritage. Both men turned to her in surprise. The Duke's expression showed concern, while the Baron's revealed cautious hope. My interest lies not in your destruction, Clara continued, addressing the Baron directly, but in recognition of my mother's rightful place in the Ashcombe lineage. Perhaps there exists a middle path, one that acknowledges truth while preserving certain continuities. The Duke studied her with newfound intensity. What precisely are you suggesting, Miss Whitmore? A formal public acknowledgement of my mother as legitimate daughter of the 7th Baron, Clara proposed. Legal recognition of my position in the succession, with provision that the current Baron retain lifetime management of the estates. A trust established for any children I might bear, ensuring their place in the Ashcombe lineage. The Baron's expression shifted from desperate hope to calculation. Such an arrangement would require delicate legal construction. Indeed, the Duke agreed, his tone softening marginally as he recognized Clara's intent. However, it offers resolution without the extended litigation all parties wish to avoid. A complex negotiation ensued, with the Duke occasionally tempering Clara's generosity with pragmatic stipulations. Eventually, a framework emerged. The Baron would retain his title and estates during his lifetime, with Clara recognized as legitimate heir and granted an immediate seat on the family trust. The Baron would issue a public statement, acknowledging Clara's mother as the firstborn legitimate child of the 7th Baron, effectively rehabilitating both Whitmore women's reputations. One additional condition, the Duke stipulated firmly. The Countess Verena must publicly retract her accusations against Miss Whitmore and her father. The Baron hesitated. The Countess is no longer under my influence, yet she acted as your proxy in defaming Miss Whitmore, the Duke countered. Her retraction is non-negotiable. Eventually the Baron capitulated, agreeing to use what influence remained to secure the Countess's compliance. Documents would be drawn up immediately, with formal signing to occur that evening at Ravenshire House in the presence of selected witnesses. As they prepared to depart, the Baron addressed Clara directly for the first time without calculation or defensiveness. Miss Whitmore, your generosity exceeds anything I might reasonably have expected. I find myself humbled by your approach to this matter. Not generosity but perspective, Baron Ashcombe, Clara replied quietly. Destruction rarely serves justice, however satisfying it might momentarily appear. The Duke's hand rested supportively at her elbow as they left the Baron's study. Once inside the Ravenshire carriage, Clara finally permitted herself a small tremor of reaction to the morning's intensity. So you are displeased with my compromise, she ventured, studying the Duke's pensive expression. Not displeased, he corrected gently. Impressed. You found resolution where I saw only confrontation. The arrangement you proposed serves justice without unnecessary destruction, a distinction I failed to consider adequately. Sir Rowan, seated opposite, nodded in agreement. Miss Whitmore demonstrated remarkable wisdom. The Baron deserved far less consideration than she afforded him. Perhaps, Clara acknowledged, yet complete dispossession would have created a vengeful enemy rather than a chastened ally. This arrangement acknowledges truth while allowing dignity to remain intact. The Duke's grey eyes studied her with deepening respect. You will make a formidable Duchess, Clara Whitmore. Ravenshire has not seen such balanced judgment in generations. That evening, in the formal library of Ravenshire House, documents were signed establishing Clara's place in the Ashcombe succession while preserving the Baron's immediate position. Lady Helena presided like a benevolent general, ensuring every detail received proper attention. There remains the matter of the winter assembly at Northbrook House tomorrow evening, she remarked, as the solicitors gathered their papers. The timing proves remarkably fortuitous. The Duke nodded in agreement. The perfect opportunity to present both our engagement and the resolution of the Ashcombe succession to society. The Baron, still processing his narrow escape from complete disgrace, managed a strained smile. I shall of course attend to publicly acknowledge Miss Whitmore's position, as will the Countess Verena, Lady Helena added with steely determination. I have taken the liberty of communicating certain expectations regarding her attendance and public statement. Later that night, alone in her chambers at Berkeley Square, Clara finally permitted herself to absorb the day's extraordinary developments. From threatened disgrace to acknowledged heir in a single day, the transformation seemed almost too profound to comprehend. A soft knock at her door heralded Lady Helena's appearance. You conducted yourself admirably today, the older woman stated without preamble. Adrian is quite correct. You will make a formidable Duchess. I simply sought balance between justice and mercy, Clara replied. Complete victory often proves hollow. Lady Helena settled herself in a chair near the fire. A lesson many never learn, regardless of age or station. Now, regarding tomorrow's assembly, the Ravenshire diamonds will be delivered in the morning. Tradition dictates their appearance at significant social declarations. Diamonds? Clara echoed faintly. Surely that's excessive for a mere assembly. Nothing about tomorrow will be mere, my dear, Lady Helena corrected. Tomorrow marks your formal introduction as future Duchess of Ravenshire and acknowledged heir to the Ashcombe legacy. Society must witness both your triumph and the Baron's capitulation. As moonlight filtered through frosted windows, Clara contemplated the silver signet ring upon her finger, symbol of an alliance that had transformed from arrangement to genuine partnership. Tomorrow would indeed bring resolution, but what form that resolution might ultimately take remained uncertain. The winter assembly at Northbrook House would either cement her rehabilitation or expose new vulnerabilities in her precarious position. Either way, Clara Whitmore, daughter of a scholar, legitimate heir to an ancient title and future Duchess, would face society's judgment with newfound confidence in both her heritage and her worth. Snow fell in delicate flurries as carriages lined the circular drive of Northbrook House, their lanterns glowing like fireflies against the darkening sky. The Winter Assembly, traditionally the most exclusive gathering of London's social season, had assumed unprecedented significance this year. Rumours had circulated throughout the day regarding extraordinary developments in the Ashcombe succession and the Duke of Ravenshire's unexpected engagement, transforming what might have been a routine social obligation into an event of historic consequence. Clara sat beside Lady Helena in the Ravenshire carriage, acutely conscious of the diamond necklace at her throat. The ducal jewels, an elaborate confection of perfectly matched stones arranged in graduated tiers, felt both foreign and strangely predestined against her skin. "Remember," Lady Helena instructed as they approached the grand entrance, "you enter not as supplicant seeking readmission to society, but as acknowledged heir to one ancient family and future Duchess of another. Carry yourself accordingly." The Duke, resplendent in formal evening attire, awaited them at the foot of the marble staircase. His grey eyes warmed appreciably at the sight of Clara, though his public demeanour maintained its characteristic reserve. "You look magnificent," he murmured as he offered his arm. "The diamonds have found their rightful home." Clara managed a small smile despite her trepidation. "They feel rather like a coronation crown, simultaneously empowering and terribly weighty." "An apt comparison," he acknowledged. "Tonight is indeed a coronation of sorts." As they ascended the staircase, the assembled guests fell into expectant silence. Clara felt countless eyes assessing her transformation, from disgraced spinster to bejeweled bride-to-be, her silver-blue gown, another masterpiece from Madame Delacroix, emphasizing both elegance and authority. Lady Northbrook, the evening's hostess, greeted them with elaborate courtesy. "Your Grace, Miss Whitmore, what exceptional pleasure to welcome you both. We are particularly honored by your attendance given the significant developments I understand have recently transpired." "Developments which shall be properly announced this evening," the Duke confirmed with a slight bow. "We appreciate your gracious accommodation of these somewhat unorthodox proceedings." Clara scanned the glittering assemblage, noting with inward satisfaction that the Countess Verena had indeed attended as instructed. She stood near the refreshment table, her emerald gown conspicuously subdued compared to her usual flamboyance, her expression a study in barely concealed resentment. The Baron Ashcombe had positioned himself strategically near the orchestra, attempting to project nonchalance despite the occasional tremor in his hands as he accepted a glass of champagne. Sir Rowan Linton maintained discreet surveillance of both former conspirators while engaging Lady Mildred in animated conversation. "Courage," the Duke murmured as they moved into the ballroom. "The most difficult steps are often those taken in full view of one's former detractors." As they circulated among the guests, Clara experienced the bewildering sensation of witnessing her own social resurrection. People who had pointedly avoided her gaze in public now sought her attention with eager deference. Former critics suddenly discovered previously unmentioned admiration for her dignified forbearance during trying circumstances. "The hypocrisy is rather breathtaking," Clara observed quietly to Lady Helena during a momentary respite. 6 months of calculated shunning erased by a diamond necklace and a title. "Not erased, but illuminated," Lady Helena corrected. "Society's fickleness reveals more about its adherents than its targets. Remember this lesson when you wield influence as Duchess of Ravenshiire." The orchestra concluded its opening set, and Sir Rowan discreetly signalled the Duke. The moment for formal announcements had arrived. Lord Northbrook, a portly gentleman with surprising dignity, called for attention. "Distinguished guests, we are privileged to witness several significant announcements this evening. First, His Grace, the Duke of Ravenshiire, requests your attention." The Duke stepped forward, his commanding presence immediately silencing the assembled company. Clara moved to his side, conscious of the symbolic weight of their public alignment. "My lords, ladies, and gentlemen," the Duke began, his resonant voice carrying effortlessly, "it gives me profound pleasure to formally announce my betrothal to Miss Clara Whitmore. Our marriage will take place at Ravenshiire Chapel 3 weeks hence." A murmur of reaction rippled through the crowd. Partly surprise, partly validation of already circulating rumours. The Duke raised his hand slightly, indicating he had not concluded. "Furthermore, recent developments regarding Miss Whitmore's maternal lineage merit equal attention. I invite Baron Ashcombe to address this matter directly." A momentary hush fell as the Baron made his way forward. His complexion appeared ashen, despite evident efforts at composure, yet he managed to project dignity as he addressed the assembly. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, voice initially unsteady but gathering conviction, "recent historical research has brought to light certain facts regarding my family's succession that require acknowledgement. It has been conclusively established that Professor Whitmore's late wife, Eleonora, was the legitimate daughter of my great-grandfather, the 7th Baron Ashcombe, through his first marriage to Madeleine Laurent. The assembled guests exchanged glances of astonishment as the Baron continued. Consequently, Miss Clara Whitmore has been legally recognized as direct descendant in the Ashcombe line. Through mutual agreement formalized yesterday, Miss Whitmore has graciously consented to an arrangement whereby I retain lifetime management of the Ashcombe estates with formal acknowledgement of her position in the succession. Clara stepped forward, her voice clear and measured. This resolution seeks neither disruption nor revenge, but simply acknowledgement of historical truth. The arrangement honors both present stewardship and legitimate lineage. The Duke's hand rested supportively at the small of her back as he addressed the still stunned assemblage. I believe the Countess Verena also wishes to make a statement regarding certain misunderstandings that have circulated in recent months. All eyes turned expectantly toward the Countess, whose frozen smile barely disguised her humiliation. With visible reluctance, she moved to join the central group, her usual confident swagger noticeably diminished. "I wish to express my sincere regret," she stated, each word seemingly extracted under duress, "for any mischaracterizations regarding Miss Whitmore that may have originated from my drawing room. It appears certain correspondence attributed to Miss Whitmore was, in fact, incorrectly identified. I am pleased that proper understanding has now been established." The carefully crafted non-apology represented the absolute minimum required by the agreement, yet its public delivery before hundreds of witnesses effectively sealed Clara's rehabilitation. The Ton might privately question the Countess's sincerity, but none would dare perpetuate allegations she had now publicly disavowed. Lord Northbrook, recognizing the historical significance of these declarations, raised his glass. "Ladies and gentlemen, I propose a toast to the future Duchess of Ravensshire and to the honourable resolution of the Ashcombe succession. May truth and dignity always prevail in our society." The assembled guests raised their glasses with varying degrees of enthusiasm, social obligation momentarily overriding personal reservations. As the orchestra resumed playing, the Duke turned to Clara with quiet satisfaction. "The formal battle is won," he observed. "Now comes the equally important campaign of the ballroom." "Must we dance?" Clara asked, suddenly feeling the emotional weight of the evening's proceedings. "I confess I find myself rather overwhelmed." "Precisely why we must," he replied gently. "Your visible participation in normal social pleasures demonstrates that tonight's revelations represent not extraordinary accommodation, but simple justice." As they took their positions for the opening bars of a waltz, Clara became acutely aware of the symbolic tableau they presented, the powerful Duke publicly aligning himself with the woman whose reputation he had helped restore, their partnership now reinforced by her newly acknowledged heritage. "You have conducted yourself magnificently," the Duke murmured, as they moved gracefully across the polished floor. "Lady Helena is positively beaming with approval, a sight rarer than a solar eclipse, I assure you." Clara permitted herself a small smile. "I have merely followed the path of dignity you helped illuminate." "You would have found it regardless," he replied with unexpected warmth. "My contribution lay simply in clearing certain obstacles that should never have been placed in your way." As they completed the dance, the Baron approached, formally requesting the next dance with Clara, a public gesture of reconciliation carefully choreographed to reinforce their newly established arrangement. "Miss Whitmore," he acknowledged stiffly as they took their positions, "your handling of tonight's announcements demonstrated remarkable grace. I find myself reluctantly impressed by your diplomatic acumen." "Diplomacy often proves more effective than destruction, Baron," Clara replied evenly. "We both emerge with dignity intact, if somewhat recalibrated." The Baron managed a rueful smile. "Indeed, though I confess I find the Countess less philosophical about her required public statement. She departed immediately afterward, pleading sudden indisposition. An ailment likely to persist until society's attention shifts to fresher scandal," Clara observed dryly. "Though I imagine her retreat to Kent may become rather permanent." Their conversation was interrupted by Lady Mildred's arrival with Sir Rowan. "Miss Whitmore, or should I say Lady Clara, you must allow me to express my absolute delight at these wonderful developments. I always suspected there was more to your situation than common understanding allowed." Clara accepted this flagrant revision of history with serene politeness. "Your support has been most appreciated, Lady Mildred. Sir Rowan tells me you were instrumental in locating certain key witnesses regarding my mother's documentation. Lady Mildred preened visibly at this strategic acknowledgement of her minimal contribution. One does what one can for justice, my dear. Though I must say the Ravenshire diamonds become you remarkably, almost as though they were designed with you in mind. As the evening progressed, Clara found herself the centre of attention she had neither sought nor desired. Yet with each conversation, each carefully navigated social exchange, she grew increasingly comfortable in her transformed position. The woman who had moved invisibly through Covent Garden Market just weeks earlier now commanded deference from the very society that had once condemned her. Near midnight, as the assembly reached its social apex, the Duke led Clara onto a snow-dusted terrace momentarily deserted by other guests. The winter air felt bracingly pure after the hothouse atmosphere of the ballroom. "You've triumphed completely," he observed, his breath forming delicate clouds in the cold. "Though I suspect victory tastes rather different than anticipated." Clara nodded thoughtfully. "Less sweet than expected, perhaps. There is a certain hollowness in watching principles bend so readily to accommodation. The true victory lies not in their capitulation, but in your vindication," the Duke reminded her. "The documents confirming your mother's legitimacy now reside in permanent legal record. The truth you and your father protected has finally claimed its rightful place." "Thanks to you," Clara acknowledged softly. "Without your intervention, without my intervention," he interrupted gently, "you would eventually have found another path to justice. Your resourcefulness and determination were evident long before my appearance at Covent Garden Market." Clara studied him in the moonlight, noting how the austere lines of his face had softened over their weeks of acquaintance. "You credit me with more agency than circumstances permitted." "On the contrary," he countered, taking her gloved hands in his. "I recognized in you a spirit that circumstance might temporarily suppress, but could never truly diminish. That recognition preceded any romantic inclination." "And now?" Clara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Has acquaintance confirmed or diminished that initial impression?" The Duke's grey eyes held unexpected warmth as he regarded her. "Acquaintance has transformed impression into certainty. What began as admiration for your dignity has evolved into something far more profound." For the first time since their engagement, he drew her gently into his arms, not for the formal embrace of a ballroom dance, but the intimate gesture of a man genuinely affected. "Clara Whitmore, I find myself in the unexpected position of having fallen quite thoroughly in love with my intended bride." Clara's heart seemed to suspend its rhythm momentarily. "Your Grace, Adrian, you needn't say such things merely to ease our arrangement. The legal parameters of our marriage were established with clear understanding. Parameters now rendered entirely insufficient," he replied, his voice dropping lower. "I entered our engagement seeking to restore justice. I find myself now seeking something far more personal, your affection freely given, not from gratitude but from genuine regard." In the crystalline winter night, with snowflakes beginning to drift around them, Clara found herself facing yet another transformation, the evolution of strategic alliance into authentic emotional connection. "I cannot pretend indifference," she admitted softly. "Your steadfast support awakened feelings I had thought permanently subdued. Yet I feared attributing them to mere gratitude might diminish their significance." The Duke's smile, rare, genuine, and transformative, illuminated his features. "Then perhaps gratitude has served as foundation rather than substitute for deeper sentiment." Their first kiss, gentle yet imbued with genuine emotion, seemed to seal their private covenant as effectively as any public declaration had formalized their social alliance. The Ravenshire diamonds at Clara's throat caught moonlight and scattered it like stars against the darkness. Symbols not merely of wealth and position, but of truth, finally permitted its proper illumination. When they returned to the ballroom moments later, several observant guests noted a subtle but significant change. The formal courtesy between them had softened into something warmer, more natural, and decidedly less calculated. "Well," Lady Helena remarked with quiet satisfaction to Sir Rowan, "it appears the arrangement has evolved according to its natural potential." "Most satisfactory." Sir Rowan's smile acknowledged his silent agreement. "Indeed, though I confess I had my doubts initially. Marriages of principle so rarely transform into marriages of genuine affection. Principle merely provided the structure," Lady Helena corrected astutely. "Character supplied the true foundation. Both possess it in abundance, though in refreshingly complementary forms." As the winter assembly concluded, guests departing into the snowy London night carried with them tales of extraordinary revelations and unexpected alliances. Yet the most significant development, the transformation of strategic engagement into genuine attachment, remained private, cherished by its participants as the most unexpected triumph of an already remarkable evening. The 3 weeks following the Winter Assembly passed in a whirlwind of activity as preparations for the wedding consumed every household connected with the event. Ravenshire House bustled with unprecedented activity as rooms unopened for decades were prepared for the influx of family members arriving from distant estates. Lady Helena maintained rigorous supervision of all arrangements, determined that her nephew's marriage would set new standards for dignified celebration. "Not ostentation but elegance," she repeatedly instructed the harried staff. "The distinction proves essential, particularly given recent developments." Those recent developments had indeed provided London society with unprecedented conversational fodder. The Baron's public acknowledgement of Clara's maternal lineage had generated ripples extending far beyond their immediate circle. Distant Ashcombe relations suddenly discovered pressing business in London, eager to assess this unexpected addition to their family tree. Scholars who had dismissed Professor Whitmore's academic contributions now hastily re-evaluated his research, finding previously overlooked merit in his historical analysis. Most significantly, the Countess Verina's precipitous departure from London had transformed into something more permanent. Rumours circulated regarding significant financial losses connected to the Baron's legal difficulties. Her country estate in Kent had been quietly listed for sale, and reliable sources reported she had accepted an invitation from distant relatives in Italy, a social retreat typically reserved for those requiring extended absence from English scrutiny. Clara observed these developments with detached interest, her attention focused primarily on the profound personal transformation occurring within her engagement. What had begun as strategic alliance had blossomed into genuine affection, deepening with each private conversation and shared confidence. "I find myself continually surprised," she confessed to Lady Helena during a rare quiet moment, "by how naturally we've progressed from arrangement to attachment. I had not anticipated such ease between us. Compatibility reveals itself most authentically under pressure," Lady Helena observed sagely. "Your mutual challenges provided rare opportunity to witness each other's true character without social pretense." The wedding preparations had necessitated Clara's complete relocation to Lady Helena's Berkeley Square residence, where a steady stream of modistes, jewellers, and various specialists arrived daily to ensure the future Duchess of Ravenshire would present appropriately. The trousseau expanded to proportions Clara found almost embarrassing, despite Lady Helena's insistence that each item represented necessary equipment rather than frivolous indulgence. "A duchess requires appropriate tools," she declared, when Clara protested the extensive wardrobe. "Just as a general needs proper weaponry, you require suitable attire for the various campaigns of social significance you will undertake." 1 week before the wedding, as Clara reviewed final arrangements with the Ravenshire housekeeper, an unexpected visitor requested a private audience. Mrs. Harrington had returned from Bedfordshire, bearing additional documents regarding the Ashcombe lineage. "My dear Miss Whitmore," the vicar's wife exclaimed, embracing Clara warmly, "how magnificent you look! Happiness becomes you remarkably well." Clara returned the embrace with genuine affection. "Your discovery of my father's hidden documentation changed everything, Mrs. Harrington. I remain forever in your debt." "Nonsense," the older woman replied briskly. "Justice merely required proper evidence, which Providence placed in my husband's safekeeping." She withdrew several yellowed papers from her reticule. "These additional letters arrived yesterday from France. Correspondence between your grandmother Madeline and her cousin in Paris, referencing her marriage to the 7th Baron." Clara examined the fragile documents with reverent care. How extraordinary that these should surface now, after all these years. "Perhaps not so extraordinary," Mrs. Harrington suggested. "Truth possesses its own momentum once initially revealed. These merely provide additional confirmation of what has already been established." As they reviewed the letters together, Clara found herself deeply moved by these tangible connections to her maternal heritage. Madeleine Laurent's elegant handwriting described her clandestine marriage with restrained joy, her subsequent separation from her husband with dignified sorrow. One passage particularly affected Clara. "Though circumstance and duty may separate us physically, the truth of our union remains inviolate in the eyes of God and legitimate record. Our daughter shall know her rightful heritage, even if society temporarily denies its acknowledgement. My mother never knew, Clara murmured. She died believing herself merely the ward of distant relations. Mrs. Harrington patted her hand sympathetically. Yet her daughter has restored that knowledge. There is profound completion in that fact. That evening, Clara shared the letters with the Duke during their now customary evening walk through Lady Helena's winter garden. Despite the season's chill, they had established this private ritual, a precious interlude of unguarded conversation amid the increasing demands of public obligation. Your grandmother possessed remarkable foresight, Adrian observed as he returned the letters. These documents essentially created a historical safety net should the truth ever require verification. A scholar's daughter, Clara noted with a smile. Documentation appears to run in the maternal line. Adrian's answering smile held genuine warmth. A trait the Ravenshire archives will undoubtedly benefit from in coming generations. Our family records have suffered from decidedly haphazard maintenance in recent decades. The casual reference to their shared future, to children who would continue both lineages, no longer produced the awkward self-consciousness of their early engagement. Their relationship had evolved into comfortable partnership, underpinned by growing affection. "Have you decided regarding the Ashcombe property questions?" Adrian inquired, as they completed another circuit of the frozen garden. The solicitors require direction regarding trust provisions. Clara had been considering this matter for several days. The legal recognition of her position in the Ashcombe succession had raised complex questions regarding property entitlements and future inheritance. "I believe the most appropriate approach maintains our original agreement," she replied thoughtfully. "The Baron retains lifetime management of the estates, with oversight from the family trust. Any children we might have would stand in direct line for eventual inheritance, maintaining both bloodlines' continuity." Adrian nodded approvingly. "A gracious and practical resolution, though I confess some surprise that you claim no immediate financial benefit from the arrangement." "Financial benefit was never my objective," Clara reminded him. "Recognition of truth and restoration of reputation fulfilled my essential requirements. Besides," she added with a small smile, "I believe the Ravenshire resources will prove sufficient for our needs." His laughter, a sound she had come to treasure for its rarity and genuine warmth, echoed in the winter garden. "Indeed. Though I appreciate your restraint nonetheless, many would exploit such opportunity for material advantage. Many have not had the privilege of learning that dignity often proves more valuable than advantage," Clara replied. "My father's example taught that lesson effectively." The following morning brought unexpected correspondence from the Baron, a formal letter requesting a private audience with Clara before the wedding. Adrian initially objected to such meeting, but Clara gently overruled his concern. "The Baron has fulfilled every aspect of our agreement," she pointed out. "This request likely represents his attempt at personal reconciliation rather than legal renegotiation. Nevertheless, I dislike the notion of your meeting him unaccompanied," Adrian persisted. "His previous manipulations warrant continued caution." They eventually compromised. The meeting would occur in Lady Helena's drawing room with the older woman present as nominal chaperone, though she would maintain discreet distance during their conversation. The Baron arrived precisely at the appointed hour. His appearance markedly improved since their previous encounters. The haggard desperation had faded, replaced by sober dignity that suggested genuine adaptation to his altered circumstances. "Miss Whitmore," he acknowledged with formal bow, "I appreciate your willingness to receive me despite our complex history. The past need not permanently determine future interactions, Baron Ashcombe," Clara replied evenly. "I believe we have established a workable framework for moving forward." He nodded, seeming to gather his thoughts before continuing. "My purpose today extends beyond formal courtesy. I wish to offer something more personal than legal accommodation, specifically an explanation regarding my actions following our broken engagement." Clara gestured toward the chairs near the fire. "I confess some curiosity regarding your decisions during that period." The Baron seated himself with careful precision. "When your father approached me regarding the documentation he had discovered, I initially dismissed his claims as academic fantasy. The implications seemed too fantastical to credit. My grandfather's illegitimacy, your mother's legitimate claim to the title. Yet subsequent investigation confirmed these fantastical claims," Clara observed. "Indeed," he acknowledged ruefully, "which precipitated genuine crisis, not merely regarding succession but financial stability. The Ashcombe estates, while impressive in appearance, have struggled under significant debt for generations. My father suspected as much, Clara commented. His research suggested the 7th Baron's French investments were largely lost during the Revolution. The Baron nodded. A financial wound, from which the family never fully recovered. Each generation maintained appearances, while gradually selling peripheral properties to service accumulating debt. Understanding dawned, as Clara connected these revelations to subsequent events. So when the Countess Verena appeared with her substantial fortune, she represented financial salvation, the Baron confirmed. Her wealth could eliminate the estate's debt entirely, securing the Ashcombe legacy for future generations. However, she imposed certain conditions regarding existing attachments. Our engagement became inconvenient, Clara stated flatly. Worse than inconvenient, he admitted. Potentially catastrophic. The Countess, having investigated your background thoroughly, recognized the potential threat Professor Whitmore's research posed to my legitimacy. She demanded not merely our disengagement, but your complete social destruction, insurance against future claims. Clara absorbed this confirmation of the Countess's calculated malevolence with remarkable composure. And you complied rather than risk losing her financial salvation. The Baron's expression reflected genuine regret. I convinced myself the choice represented necessary sacrifice for family obligation rather than personal cowardice. The rationalization proved temporarily effective but ultimately hollow. Why reveal this now? Clara asked quietly. Our legal arrangement has been finalized. Social rehabilitation has been achieved. Because mere legal resolution seems insufficient, he replied with unexpected earnestness. You deserved better treatment than I provided. While I cannot undo the damage inflicted, I can at least offer honest acknowledgement of its calculated nature. Lady Helena, observing from across the room, raised an approving eyebrow at this unexpected display of genuine contrition. Furthermore, the Baron continued, withdrawing a small package from his coat, I wish to return something wrongfully withheld. Your mother's miniature portrait, the one your father kept in his study. During our disagreement, I removed it along with the documentation. It rightfully belongs to you. Clara accepted the carefully wrapped package with visibly trembling hands. Within lay a small oval portrait of extraordinary quality, a young woman with Clara's blue-grey eyes and gentle expression, dressed in the fashion of 30 years prior. I never had a likeness of her, Clara whispered, emotion momentarily overwhelming her customary composure. She died when I was too young to retain clear memories. The artist captured her remarkable serenity, the Baron observed, a quality you clearly inherited, along with the Ashcombe eyes. This simple acknowledgement of their shared bloodline, offered freely rather than extracted under legal duress, marked significant evolution in their complex relationship. No longer adversaries manipulating for advantage, they had become reluctant family connections navigating mutual accommodation. As the Baron prepared to depart, he offered one final observation. Your upcoming marriage represents perfect resolution to our complicated situation. The Duke of Ravenshire's protection ensures no future challenge to your position, while your evident affection for each other suggests genuine partnership rather than mere arrangement. Clara's surprise must have shown, for he continued with unexpected perception. I observed you both at the Winter Assembly. What began as strategic alliance has clearly evolved into something more authentic. I find myself unexpectedly pleased by this development. After his departure, Lady Helena joined Clara by the fire. Well, she remarked briskly, that proved considerably more satisfactory than anticipated. Genuine contrition remains remarkably rare in men of his position. Financial disaster followed by public humiliation provides powerful incentive for character development, Clara observed dryly, still cradling her mother's portrait. Though I believe his regret contains elements of genuine remorse beneath practical accommodation. Sufficient for civilized future interaction, Lady Helena agreed, which serves your purposes adequately without requiring impossible forgiveness. The week before the wedding passed in flurried activity, culminating in Clara's final night as unmarried woman. As she prepared for sleep in her Berkeley Square chamber, Lady Helena arrived bearing a small velvet box. A traditional gift from Adrian's mother, she explained, presenting the box with uncharacteristic sentimentality. She instructed me to keep this for his future bride, a woman she unfortunately never had opportunity to meet. Within lay a delicate silver filigree bracelet set with small pearls and a single diamond at its center. The Ravenshire Bride's bracelet, Lady Helena continued, worn by every duchess since the 17th century on her wedding day. Clara accepted the exquisite piece with appropriate reverence. I'm deeply honored by this connection to Adrian's mother. Elizabeth would have approved thoroughly of her son's choice, Lady Helena stated with unusual emotional transparency. She valued character above connection, substance above superficial charm. You embody qualities she most admired. As darkness settled over London, Clara stood at her window watching snowflakes dance in the lamplight. Tomorrow would bring final transformation, from disgraced spinster to honored duchess, from isolated survivor to protected partner. The journey from Covent Garden Market to Ravenshire Chapel had traversed territory both treacherous and transformative. Yet as she contemplated her mother's portrait, now positioned on her bedside table, Clara recognized that the most significant change lay not in external circumstance but internal perspective. The painful path to vindication had revealed strength she hadn't recognized, resilience she hadn't acknowledged, and capacity for forgiveness she hadn't anticipated. Tomorrow would indeed bring ceremony and celebration, public acknowledgement and private commitment. But the true transformation, from woman defined by others' perceptions to woman secure in self-knowledge, had already occurred in the crucible of adversity navigated with dignity and tact. Spring arrived with unexpected gentleness that year, as though nature itself acknowledged the harshness of the preceding winter and sought to provide compensatory beauty. The gardens at Ravenshire House bloomed with particular abundance, roses climbing ancient stone walls with renewed vigor, formal parterres exploding in carefully orchestrated color. Clara, now Duchess of Ravenshire for 3 months, stood at the drawing-room window observing the transformation with quiet satisfaction. The parallel between nature's renewal and her own circumstances did not escape her appreciation for poetic symmetry. Contemplating horticultural metaphors, came Adrian's amused voice from the doorway. Your expression suggests profound thoughts regarding those roses. Clara turned with a smile that still carried traces of wonder at her transformed circumstances, merely appreciating the seasonal contrast. Winter's severity makes spring's arrival particularly satisfying. Indeed, he agreed, crossing to join her at the window, though I confess some affection for winter's clarity. Spring brings its own complications, beautiful but requiring careful management. Their easy conversation reflected the comfortable partnership that had developed since their February wedding. The ceremony at Ravenshire Chapel had proceeded with dignified simplicity, despite its social significance, the subsequent celebration balancing appropriate festivity with restrained elegance. Society pages had declared it the perfect culmination to London's most extraordinary social rehabilitation in recent memory. Lady Helena, who had remained at Ravenshire House following the wedding, rather than returning to her usual spring residence in Bath, appeared in the doorway. The Baron's carriage has been sighted approaching the main gates, she announced, precisely on time, which suggests genuine reform of character. Punctuality often indicates moral improvement. Clara exchanged an amused glance with her husband. Lady Helena's pronouncements on character development had become a familiar source of private entertainment during their shared household arrangement. The conservatory has been prepared for tea, Clara confirmed, and the documents from the solicitors arrived this morning for final review. Today's meeting represented the culmination of arrangements regarding the Ashcombe succession, final signatures on trust documents that would permanently establish Clara's position in the family line while confirming the Baron's lifetime management of the estates. The legal framework, complex but comprehensive, had required months of careful negotiation. Sir Rowan has offered to provide discreet supervision of the proceedings, Adrian remarked, adjusting his cravat with habitual precision. Though I assured him such oversight proves unnecessary at this juncture, Clara nodded in agreement. The Baron has demonstrated remarkable adherence to both letter and spirit of our arrangement. His public acknowledgement of my maternal lineage at Lady Pemberton's musical evening last week seemed genuinely heartfelt, rather than merely obligatory. The Baron's arrival proceeded with appropriate formality, the Ravenshire butler announcing him with precisely calibrated deference, acknowledging his title while subtly emphasizing his visitor status within the ducal residence. Clara received him in the main drawing room, Adrian at her side presenting unified authority. "Your Grace," the Baron acknowledged with formal bow to Clara, a courtesy that had initially felt strange but now seemed natural expression of their recalibrated relationship. "Your Grace," he repeated with similar gesture toward Adrian. "Lady Helena," I trust this fine spring day finds you all in good health. Indeed, Baron Ashcombe, Clara replied with genuine cordiality. We appreciate your punctuality regarding these final arrangements. As they proceeded to the conservatory where tea awaited, Clara noted the continued improvement in the Baron's appearance. The haggard desperation that had marked their early encounters had been replaced by dignified acceptance of altered circumstances. His clothing, while still of excellent quality, displayed subtle moderation compared to his former ostentation. I received correspondence from Italy yesterday, he remarked as they seated themselves amid blooming citrus trees and climbing jasmine. The Countess Verena appears to have established herself quite successfully in Florence. She mentions potential marriage negotiations with an elderly Italian count of substantial means but declining health. Adrian raised an eyebrow. Her talent for strategic alliance remains apparently undiminished, though now exercised at comfortable distance from English society, Lady Helena added with satisfaction. Geographic separation proves remarkably effective for certain social difficulties. The Baron's expression reflected rueful acknowledgement. Her departure has simplified numerous arrangements, though I bear responsibility for initially enabling her involvement in our unfortunate situation. This acknowledgement of personal culpability, offered without prompting or defensive qualification, marked significant evolution in the Baron's character. Clara exchanged an approving glance with her husband, whose subtle nod confirmed shared assessment. Their business concluded efficiently, trust documents signed with appropriate witnesses present. The Baron prepared to depart but hesitated momentarily in the entrance hall. There remains one additional matter, he stated, his manner suggesting genuine discomfort. A personal rather than legal consideration. Of course, Clara responded. Please speak freely. I have been contemplating certain aspects of our shared heritage, the Baron explained, specifically items that rightfully belong to your maternal line rather than the general Ashcombe collection. He withdrew a small leather case from his coat. This signet ring belonged to your grandfather, the 7th Baron. It passed to my grandfather when he assumed the title, though by right it should have gone to your mother, as firstborn legitimate child. Clara accepted the case with visible emotion. Within lay a heavy silver signet ring bearing the Ashcombe crest, a falcon with outstretched wings, above a stylized representation of their ancestral home. This represents not legal obligation, but personal acknowledgement, the Baron continued. The ring symbolizes bloodline rather than title, connection that transcends legal arrangements. A most thoughtful gesture, Adrian observed, genuine approval evident in his tone. The symbolic weight exceeds its material value considerably. Precisely my intention, the Baron confirmed. While our legal framework addresses titles and estates, certain family connections require more personal recognition. After his departure, Clara stood in the entrance hall examining the signet ring with careful attention. A remarkable gesture, she murmured, particularly given its voluntary nature. Adversity occasionally produces genuine character improvement, Lady Helena observed, though rarely without significant external motivation. Later that evening, as Clara and Adrian enjoyed their customary after-dinner walk through the Ravenshire Gardens, the last light of sunset gilded spring blooms with golden illumination. Their conversation turned to future plans, renovations at the country estate, charitable initiatives for the coming season, potential diplomatic engagements that would require the Duchess's official presence alongside her husband. Your adaptation to ducal responsibilities continues to impress observers, Adrian remarked as they paused beside a particularly magnificent climbing rose. Lady Northbrook commented specifically on your gracious handling of the hospital committee disagreements last week. Clara smiled at the recollection. Experience navigating social hostility provides excellent preparation for diplomatic challenges. After surviving orchestrated disgrace, managing philanthropic disagreements seems remarkably straightforward. Adrian's answering smile held genuine warmth. The transformation of misfortune into strength represents perhaps your most remarkable quality. Many would emerge from such experience embittered rather than empowered. Bitterness offers poor foundation for rebuilding, Clara observed thoughtfully. I discovered that truth during those isolated months, before our paths converged. Their conversation paused as they reached the small classical temple that crowned the garden's eastern slope. From this vantage point, London sprawled before them, the city that had witnessed both her humiliation and her triumph, now peaceful in evening light. I received correspondence from Mrs. Pembroke today, Clara mentioned as they seated themselves on the marble bench. She reports that 3 more young women have found refuge at the Clara Whitmore Home for Gentlewomen in reduced circumstances. This charitable foundation, established with portion of Clara's settlement from the Ashcombe arrangement, had become her most passionate project. The home provided temporary residence and vocational training for educated women who, like herself, had experienced sudden reversal of fortune without family support. "A most fitting legacy," Adrian commented with evident pride, transforming personal adversity into institutional protection for others similarly situated. "The silver thread woven through difficulty," Clara agreed. "Finding purpose in pain provides its only meaningful justification." As twilight deepened around them, Clara contemplated the extraordinary journey from that snow-covered morning in Covent Garden Market to this peaceful evening as Duchess of Ravenshire. The path had traversed territory both treacherous and transformative, public humiliation and private revelation, calculated alliance and genuine affection, justice delayed and finally delivered. The silver signet ring her husband had placed upon her finger that February morning caught the fading light, its engraved crest symbolizing not merely aristocratic connection, but profound personal covenant. Beside it now rested the Ashcombe signet, physical embodiment of maternal heritage, long denied but finally acknowledged. "Do you ever consider," Adrian asked quietly, "how a chance encounter amid market stalls led to such profound transformation for us both?" Clara's answering smile held the serene wisdom, hard won through adversity, navigated with dignity. "I've come to believe chance plays smaller role than we initially recognize. Your appearance that morning represented not random coincidence, but inevitable convergence of 2 paths moving toward shared destination. A philosopher as well as a duchess," he observed with tender amusement. "My good fortune compounds daily." "As does mine," she replied simply. "From isolation to partnership, from disgrace to dignity, the journey proves worth its difficulties when the destination brings such contentment." As darkness settled over the garden, stars emerging in velvet sky, Clara reflected on the silver threads of truth that had ultimately woven resolution from chaos. Her father's meticulous documentation, her own unwavering dignity, Adrian's principled intervention, even the Baron's eventual acknowledgement of reality long suppressed. Truth, once fully revealed, had illuminated not merely historical facts, but personal qualities previously obscured by circumstance, strength she hadn't recognized, resilience she hadn't acknowledged, capacity for forgiveness she hadn't anticipated. The winter of her disgrace had yielded to spring of renewal, not through passive endurance, but active embrace of both justice and mercy in appropriate measure. The following morning, as Clara reviewed correspondence in her private study, formerly Adrian's mother's domain, now transformed with subtle feminine touches while maintaining its traditional dignity, Lady Helena arrived bearing news from her extensive network of social informants. "The Countess Verina's Italian arrangements have apparently collapsed," she reported with barely concealed satisfaction. "The elderly Count discovered certain financial misrepresentations before contracts were finalized. She now seeks refuge with increasingly distant relations in Milan." Clara absorbed this information with thoughtful consideration. One almost pities her desperate maneuvering. "Almost, but not quite," Lady Helena corrected dryly. "Justice occasionally arrives through circuitous routes, but rarely misses its ultimate destination." Later that day, as Clara prepared for an official reception at the Belgian embassy, her lady's maid arranged the Ravenshire diamonds with practiced precision. The magnificent necklace, initially so foreign against her skin, now seemed natural extension of her position rather than borrowed splendor. "The Belgian ambassador specifically requested your attendance," Adrian mentioned as he entered her dressing room. "Your handling of the diplomatic contretemps at Lady Wellington's dinner apparently impressed him considerably." Clara smiled at the recollection. Another instance where experience navigating social hostility provided unexpected preparation for official responsibilities. "Transformation of adversity into advantage," Adrian observed, his grey eyes warm with admiration. "The essence of true resilience." As they departed Ravenshire House that evening, Clara cast a final glance at her mother's portrait, now prominently displayed in the main entrance hall. Visual affirmation of lineage, long denied, but finally acknowledged. The Ashcombe eyes gazed back with serene dignity that transcended historical injustice, silver threads of truth woven through generations, finally revealed in their proper pattern. Truth, Clara had discovered, possessed its own momentum once initially revealed. Like silver threads in complex tapestry, it might temporarily disappear beneath darker patterns, but ultimately emerge to complete the design with subtle brilliance. Her father's meticulous documentation, her own unwavering dignity, Adrian's principled intervention, all had contributed to revelation that transformed not merely her circumstances, but her understanding of her own capacity. The carriage bearing the Duke and Duchess of Ravenshire proceeded toward its diplomatic destination, wheels turning over cobblestones that had witnessed both her disgrace and her triumph. Within its elegant confines, Clara contemplated the extraordinary journey from isolated survivor to respected partner, from woman defined by others' perceptions to woman secure in self-knowledge. The silver signet ring upon her finger caught lamplight as they traversed London streets, its engraved promise, "Truth restores," fulfilled beyond expectation. For truth had indeed restored not merely reputation and position, but something far more precious. The certainty that dignity maintained through adversity ultimately reveals character's true silver beneath tarnishing circumstance. In the crucible of unjust disgrace, Clara Whitmore discovered that dignity is not bestowed by society, but preserved through one's own steadfast character. Her journey reminds us that our true worth is not measured by others' judgment, but by our unwavering commitment to truth and principle, even when standing alone. The greatest victory is not the restoration of title or status, but the revelation of our inner strength when external supports are stripped away. Like silver emerging more lustrous after tarnish is removed, our essential character often shines most brilliantly after weathering life's harshest seasons. Perhaps most powerfully, Clara's story teaches us that forgiveness and justice need not be mutually exclusive. In choosing a path that honored truth while allowing for redemption, she demonstrated that true wisdom lies not in vengeful triumph, but in balanced resolution that allows all parties to preserve dignity while acknowledging reality. The silver threads of truth may temporarily disappear beneath darker patterns of circumstance, but they ultimately emerge to complete life's design with subtle brilliance. Our task is to maintain faith in their existence, even when temporarily obscured from view. If you enjoyed this tale of dignity, restoration and love in Victorian England, I invite you to subscribe for more stories that explore the resilience of the human spirit through historical fiction. Each story is crafted with meticulous attention to period details and emotional depth to transport you to another time while illuminating timeless truths about human nature. Leave a comment sharing which character resonated most with you or what aspect of Victorian society you found most fascinating. Was it Clara's unwavering dignity, Adrian's principled stand, or perhaps the intricate dance of social expectations that shaped their world? Your thoughts and reflections help create a community of readers who appreciate the power of stories to both entertain and illuminate.